Chapter 61, Storm. In the dark color of the night, moon and stars cannot be seen. There was no light in the night sky. Sha Danan had been kneeled at the entrance of the cave for almost 6 hours. The disciples from other factions were most asleep already. Even the last light, the last fire inside the cave of the bamboo peak putted out among thousands of reluctance. Inside the cave, Tien Bolis said something, then Hidi immediately cried out, "Dad!" No sound, nothing follow it. Sha Danan did not know what happened. But soon, Xavion came out. Sha Danan lifted his head, looked at his Da Shishang. Though Xavion could not bear to say it, but he still said, "Shao Shidi, Master said you are bothering him if you kneel here, and told you to kneel farther." Sha Danan's heart sunk, his face suddenly felt something cold and freezing. In this pitch-dark night, rain fell. He did not speak, quietly rose up and walked to farther away, to the border of the thick woods, kneeled down under an ancient tree. Xavion looked at him for a moment, the figure of this Shao Shidi's had became blurry in the night rain. He sighed softly, shook his head and returned. Boom, a thunder came from the sky. The white lighting baring its teeth and showing its claws across the sky. Moment later, large drops of rain came down like small stones, hit on the rocks making popping sound. Then, heavy rain pouring down. Just in a blank of an eye the world had turned blurry. Sha Danan's entire body had got all wet. The clothes stick to his body, with an undescribable coldness. He raised his head. In the originally pitch-dark night, plus the heavy rain, he could not see details of the cave. Between heaven and earth, it seemed like leaving only he to be here suffering. He lowered his head, not moving. This heavy rain was like the punishment the heaven gives him. It was non-stop. The rain did not get weaker. The lightning and thunder howling wildly. The water dripped off from his wet hair, slipped on his cheek. Sha Danan's eyes almost could not open. But at this moment, in this raining time when there is no one here, he suddenly saw a figure appeared before him, a pair of feet stepped in front of him. He managed to lift his head. Lightning flashed across the sky, thunder banged, with the weak light, Sha Danan saw a poignantly beautiful lady stood before him. Sha Danan was stunned. Anan was also wet all over. As the light of the lighting passed away, her figure also turned into a blurry dark shape in the darkness. But Sha Danan could feel it clearly that she is standing in front of him. The night of raging storm, this gentle figure softly crouched down in front of him. The rain became more rapid, the wind became more fierce. In the deep of the forest, it was like there are devils howling. An icy cold hand, with slightly shaking, went across Sha Danan's hair. With a dreamy voice, in this stormy night, she said, "Don't be scared, it will be over soon." Quote. "I will stay here with you." Quote. Boom, a thunder was like shattered the sky, shattered the soul. Within the fierce lighting, within the howl of the wind, the time when freezing rain danced like devils, that gentle face, that pair of gentle eyes, like the sweetest figure in a dream, is staying next to him. She whispered to herself in the rain, to Sha Danan, but also to her heart, softly, softly said, "You saved me and protected me without caring your own life. I will do the same for you. The pain in your heart, the heaven knows it and I know it. I cannot help you to reduce your pain, but I can bear it together with you. Wish there will be finally a day, you can be with the person you love, happily together." The voice became softer and gone. The storm became more fierce. That figure is so weak, like an injured small grass in the wind, wavering. Sha Danan was absent-minded, it was like dream and illusion. The dark night was heavy, the sky was speechless. The storm had raged for a long time, then it slightly weakened. Sha Danan was freezing all over. The chill invaded his body. His arms and legs were already frozen. If this continue, he will be severely ill. But no matter what, he did not want to rise up and avoid the rain. In this freezing coldness, a faint warmth came from his right arm, spread slowly in his body and balanced out much of the coldness in his body. It seemed coming from the inferno mirror that tied on his right arm. Sha Danan suddenly remembered the ghostly lady. He thought that was Anan, but right now, he could not find her figure. Did she left, or she never appeared before? Thinking of that, he smiled bitterly, shook his head and the water splashed everywhere. But then, he clearly heard a voice, "Silly boy." Sha Danan turned around and almost called, "Lu Shiji." But then, a girl slowly came out from the deep woods, with an umbrella in her hand sheltering against the storm. She looked at him with smile. It was a person he could never expect he will meet here, Falcon Girl Bilu. In the night screen, although the rain got a little weaker, it was still heavy. He could not see it clearly from afar. First Sha Danan thought his eyes were playing trick, but it was really Bilu. She walked to him with a smile on her face. She was still in her green dress, her hand was still holding a green umbrella. But the storm was too strong, several places got wet on the edge of her ethereal dress. She arrived before him, her figure became clear. The places where it got wet softly stick to her skin. Sha Danan lowered his head, not looking at her. Bilu startled, crouched down before him, looked at him and smiled. You are really weird. In this heavy rain, you choose this place to kneel, is this a practice in your Jadon cultivation? Sha Danan was annoyed and glared her, but Bilu's face was unexpectedly gentle in the night, he was startled. Boom! The thunder struck from the dark clouds. Then at this moment, a large light flashed across the sky, cut it in half, then faded away. Following by this lightning and thunder, the rain was getting heavier again. Bilu frowned, she leaned forward. Sha Danan discovered the rain that hit on him became less. He was suddenly released from the heavy pressure, able to relax. He raised his head and found it was Bilu shifted half of the umbrella, sheltered the rain for him. But the rain was heavy, half of the Bilu's body has allowed a slip for the rain became wet while she took consider of Sha Danan. Sha Danan's heart felt warm, he pushed the umbrella back, said quietly, you were severely sick in Blood Drop Cave, be aware of catching cold. Bilu seemed startled, she looked at Sha Danan. Sha Danan was bewildered by her strange look, said, what? Bilu curled her lips smiled, seemed very delightful, said, so you kids still know how to worry about my health. Sha Danan blushed, but luckily in his night storm it was hard to see. He said shyly, I am afraid you will blame on me if you get sick. Bilu leaned on him, now they were side by side closely. The difference is that Sha Danan was kneeling on the ground, and Bilu was crouching next to him. At the same time, Bilu shifted the umbrella again, sheltered against the storm above their heads. Sha Danan felt there was a faint, gentle fragrance next to him in the storm. He turned and Bilu was also looking at him. Their eyes met and startled. After a while, Sha Danan moved his eyes away. His heart was beginning to beat rapidly. The talkative Bilu was also quiet at this moment, crouching next to Sha Danan, staying with him. Only when he was not noticing, she shifted the umbrella more to Sha Danan, sheltered more rain for him. Ah! Sha Danan was silent and fixed with feeling, suddenly remembered something, and cried out. He immediately turned to Bilu, with anxiety on his face, he said hurriedly, how can you come here? Bilu was not surprised by his reaction, she smiled, her voice was faint, in the sound of storm, she said with dreary sadness, I come here to see you. Sha Danan lowered his voice, but in his anxious voice there was gratefulness, they are all our righteous cultivators around here, not to mention the seniors of Skysong Temple and Incense Valley. Just any elders from Jadon can cause you die without a place to bury. Why don't you hurry and leave? Bilu was indifferent, only watching Sha Danan's anxious look with smile on her face, then she suddenly sighed, you stinking brat, you has some conscience. Sha Danan couldn't say anything. Bilu whispered, aren't you righteous? Aren't you unable to coexist with the evil? Why don't you call people to catch me? Sha Danan was already anxious, now he was like being poured by cold water. His heart was shocked, he was sweating all over. In outsiders' eyes he is not like Bei and his Shigihidi who have outstanding potential and highly intelligent, but he is not an idiot. But these years in Bamboo Peak, no one ever valued him, so he was a bit low self-esteem. But listen to Bilu's teasing, Sha Danan immediately realized his situation is very improper. Not to mention he is now punished by his master, but his allies discovered him being with a falcon girl so closely, he probably can't explain himself even if he has entire body covered with mouths. Thinking of the consequence, rang in Sha Danan's mind, he did not want to continue this. His mind was in mess and was about to call for his allies, but the corner of his eyes caught that Bilu's shoulder was leaning against him. The storm was strong, but she sheltered most of the umbrella above his head while half of her body became all wet. That dress sticked closely to her skin was reflected in his eyes. Even on her snow-white cheeks, there were raindrops formed into pearls and slipped down. Sha Danan could never let out this call. Why do you bother suffer like this? Sha Danan lowered his head, said quietly, I can see that your father must be an important person, you must be a pampered mistress. Why bother to suffer, take such a risk for this little Jadon disciple? The storm whistled, the heaven was cold, in the night rain, it was like only this place remained in the world, leaving only two of them. Bilu felt a bit cold and leaned closer to Sha Danan. This action was so intimate and familiar, like when they were at the edge of death that day in Blood Drop Cave. Her voice, with a bit drifting, "No, I do not suffer. You don't know, the true suffering of the world is in one's heart." Her voice began to fade, the words could not be heard. Sha Danan unexpectedly discovered she had quietly laid her head on his shoulder. The sound of wind and rain whistled by, but Sha Danan could only feel his brain was empty. But the fragrance next to him was so real in this cold storm, surrounded him. Morning, the clouds dispersed and the sun came out, rain stopped and the wind died down. Tien Bolis came out from the cave alone, from afar he could see his young disciple was still kneeling on the edge of the thick woods, not moving. He frowned and walked to him. Sha Danan heard the sound and lifted his head, saw it was his master Tien Bolis, he called out quietly, "Master." Tien Bolis saw his clothes were all wet, water dropped down from his hair, face was pale, his seam suffered from the heavy rain last night. Thinking of that he frowned. Sound of the people became to rise from the caves behind him, the disciples of each factions had awoke. Tien Bolis snorted, then walked into the forest. When he went past Sha Danan, he said lightly, "Follow me." Sha Danan quickly answered, then rose up, but his feet fell down when he rose to halfway. His feet were numb and sore, probably caused by kneeling for the entire night. Tien Bolis walked in the front, he paused, seemed hesitated, but still did not look back, and continued. Sha Danan gritted his teeth and massaged his legs. Luckily he is not a pampered person, the result of the bamboo peak bamboo cutting training has responded. Just a moment, his blood circulation returned a bit fluent, able to walk. Sha Danan stood up and found Tien Bolis' figure has almost disappeared in the woods, he immediately ran to catch up. Not long later, when the righteous disciples came out from the cave, their two figures were already gone. In the forest of the Billows Hill, there are all very tall ancient trees. The trees that were only require encircled by one person, here needed 2 or 3 people, and those large trees were very common here. Perhaps it is because this place is remote, used to be no one here. Sha Danan followed Tien Bolis, slowly walking. The morning light shined past the trees, showered on the bushes. In the woods after the rain, everything was washed, everywhere were green. Some nameless flowers bloomed in this lonely place, exuded with faint fragrance. Tien Bolis walked in the front, silent without word. He was squat, Sha Danan was already half a head taller than him. But in Sha Danan's eyes, this person's figure was as large as the god of the mountain. Moreover, the thing about Bilu was pressuring him like a small hill, causing his into chaos. What should he do? Just when Sha Danan's mind was frustrated, thinking should he tell his master about Bilu, Tien Bolis suddenly stopped and turned around. Sha Danan's heart jumped, also stopped walking. This place is deep in the forest, there was no one around. The woods were silent, beside the singing of the birds, there was no other sound. Tien Bolis took a look at him, expressionlessly said, "You were showered in the rain last night, is your body okay?" Sha Danan shook his head, said quietly, "Disciple deserve it, it doesn't matter." Tien Bolis snorted, "You say it easy, but does your heart hates me?" Sha Danan was surprised, his pale face became even more white, he said hurriedly, "Master, I never will have such thought. I deserve all of these, will never blame it on Master." Tien Bolis looked at the disciple who he had neglected the most in the past years, seeing his undescribable anxiety but he could feel it, his mouth moved, sighed, and his expression became more moderate. "Okay, there is no one here, do you have anything to speak to me?" Sha Danan's heart was tightened, he thought can it be Master already know about Bilu? The relationship between Sha Danan and Bilu now is subtle. Last night Bilu came, he was afraid if this is discovered by the elders, can it be? When he was thinking off the line, Tien Bolis was a bit impatient, seeing he did not reply, he said, "I am asking you, why did you suddenly do this to your Dashishang yesterday?" Sha Danan was startled for a moment, then relieved to find his master did not mean about Bilu. But then he couldn't speak again. He can not say he lost his mind because he saw Hidi was with Kevern. Moreover, even he does not know about the sudden evil energy that took control of his emotion. Tien Bolis waited for the day and Sha Danan still could not say anything, he suddenly made a cold laugh, "You were resentful because you saw the intimate action of Linger and Kevern." Sha Danan was shocked, a loud bang in his brain, he was stunned on the ground. His secret one-sided love on Hidi is one of his greatest secret, he had never told this to anyone. Now it was being said out coldly by his most respected master. This was even more soul-shocking than the earth-shocking thunder last night. At this instant, he couldn't make any movement, even without the ability to deny. He only looked at Tien Bolis with his mouth dropped, couldn't say a word. Chapter 62, Person of the Past. The sunlight passed through the thick leaves, spilled on Tien Bolis and Sha Danan. Sha Danan stood in front of Tien Bolis, very ashamed. After a while he quietly called, "Master." Tien Bolis, there was a bit red on this little disciple's face, he snorted and turned away. Sha Danan did not know what to do or what to say, but his deepest secret was seen through by the person he fears the most. This panic feeling still did not subside. Tien Bolis stood there with his hands behind the back, quiet for a long while. Sha Danan stood behind him, did not dare to take a breath. After a long time, Tien Bolis said slowly, "That being said, the one who secretly passed you the pure essence incantation is also Ling. Sha Danan's heart jumped again. But since it was related to Hidi, his mind became clear, hurriedly said, "Master, it got nothing to do with Shiji, it was me, I begged Shiji to teach me." Tien Bolis turned around and stared at Sha Danan. Sha Danan's voice immediately lowered, he knew no matter what he say, he can't conceal it from Master. In the woods, between the Master and his disciple, it fell into silence. Sha Danan lowered his head, he was disconcerted. Then at this moment, he heard his Master said, "Seventh." Sha Danan's heart jumped, raised his head, answered, "Master." Tien Bolis looked at him, said, "You were adopted under my house, it is almost 5 years. Sha Danan said quietly, "Yes." Tien Bolis said lightly, "When I adopted you, I actually did not think highly of your potential. Today you can have such achievement as really exceeded my expectation." Sha Danan moved a little, but in his heart, there was a bit of delightfulness. Tien Bolis continued, "As for you secretly love Ling." Sha Danan quickly said, "Master, it is my fault, I should not." Tien Bolis glared at him, said, "Did I said it is your fault?" Sha Danan's mouth dropped, he was really surprised by his master this time. Tien Bolis snorted, "You are at young age, also not those Skysong Temple's monks, additionally you grew up with Ling. What's so weird if you like her? You think your master live in vain? Can't even understand such little thing." Sha Danan head lowered, his eyes were heated. It was like, in his heart, all the kind words in this world cannot compare with the cold words Tien Bolis just said. Tien Bolis paused, then continued, "But now thing is different, I can also see that, Ling probably truly loved that cavern. As for you, she probably on see you as her younger brother, you understand." Sha Danan nodded, but his eyes were staring at his feet, said quietly, "Yes, master." Tien Bolis said slowly, "I opposed Ling to be with Kevern in the past, it is not because of Kevern himself, it is because." Then he paused, frowned, and changed the topic. "To be real, although your advancement in cultivation is faster than I expected, but compare with Kevern, still great difference." Tien Bolis took a deep look at Sha Danan, said slowly, "Do you understand what I mean?" Sha Danan bit his lip, then said after a long while, "Yes, I understand, master." Tien Bolis nodded, let it out a long breath, then walked to him, patted his shoulder, said, "The thing from the past, just let it go." Sha Danan felt his master's wide and warm hand on his shoulder, his heart warmed, and nodded heavily. Tien Bolis looked at him for a while, said, "Then let's return." Finished, he took the path of where they came. Sha Danan raised his head, to the above, he took a deep breath, let it go of his tightly held hands. Only, there was still a faintly discernible uncertainty hanging on his heart. He gave a bitter smile, strengthened his spirit, then followed. As they walked back to the caves, people from each factions were mostly awakened. Hidi and others were standing before the cave entrance, with anxiety on their faces. They kept looking around, appeared to be very worried. Sha Danan's heart was hurt when he saw that from afar, and lowered his head. Seeing Tien Bolis and Sha Danan returned, Hidi ran to them. Without saying anything, she first examined Sha Danan to make sure he did not get tortured by Tien Bolis, then she whispered, "Xiao Fan, where did you go with Dad at such early morning?" Sha Danan looked at her concerned face, seeing the pair of bright eyes were only looking at him, his heart was stabbed again. However, he forced a smile on his face, said, "Nothing, Master took me for a walk, taught me a few things, now he already forgave me." Tien Bolis was walking at the front, seemed to be hear what his young disciple said. He snorted, then slowly returned into the cave. Seeing his wife Saran was smiling at him at the entrance, he startled, then rolled his eyes on her, went inside without speaking. Here, the little conflict, can be say it is over. For the following days, Sha Danan stayed with his Shishongs, that he had separated from him for long time, for days and nights. He grew up under the watch of each Shishongs. Now he had returned, they were very kind to him. And Xavion open-minded, and taking the rude action of Sha Danan that day into his heart. Additionally, Saran also privately reminded him of few things. He understood it clearly and putted much more affection to for this Xiao Shidi. Among the righteous cultivators at Billows Hill, it was natural for the three major factions, Jadon Clan, Skysong Temple, and Incense Valley, to be the leaders, but there were also many smaller righteous factions. Most were the factions Sha Danan had never heard of. They were here most likely for righteous injustice, irreconcilable with the remaining Falcon. And among the three major factions, except for Master Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis of Jadon, there was no one else came from the senior generation, so virtually everything is decided by the Jadon. For the next 3 days, Sha Danan met several familiar people at Billows Hill. Li Su and Yanan of Incense also arrived at Billows Hill at the next day. Later, he saw Onera at near the place of Skysong monks. There was skinny and tiny old man standing next to him. Sha Danan greeted them joyfully. When Onera saw him, he was very excited and about to introduce his master, Herald of Valor. Then he turned to the old man who was talking to Fazan. Master, this is Brother Zhang of Jadon that I have mentioned to you before. The old man turned around. Sha Danan startled when he saw his face. In his visualization, based on the faction where Onera is called Vajra, and his master is called Herald of Valor, he thought it must be a powerful giant. However, he did not expect it was a tiny old man. He couldn't recover right away. But Onera clearly didn't thought that much. He laughed, said, Brother Zhang, hurry and greet my master. Sha Danan realized and quickly saluted. Old senior, disciple Sha Danan, have long admired your name. The old man snorted, said lightly, whatever. Then turned back and talked to Fazan. So that mean, your master Sage Puhan is in seclusion and hasn't come out yet. Fazan smiled. Exactly. The director of the temple is still master, but it is always me assist Puktan Shishu on management affair. This time the restoration of the Falcon, Puktan Shishu was going to come, however it was too busy in the temple, so only young monk came, hoping to be able to assist. Herald of Valor nodded. With you here, that is enough. But before I came, I thought even if the two divine monks, your master Pufan and Puktan, did not come, but your fourth Shishu Pufan must comes for his deep hatred on the Falcon. Why? Seeing the puzzled eyes of Herald of Valor, Fazan sighed a little. Senior not know about this, since third Shishu Puji passed away 5 years ago. Sha Danan's heart jumped, and also at this moment, Fazan glanced at him, then turned away, and continued. Pufan Shishu's friendship with Puji Shishu is the deepest. Since that time on, he began to seclusively reading Buddhist Sutra, no longer came out. Herald of Valor exclaimed, ah. Fazan smiled. But this is not a bad thing. Herald of Valor laughed. Correct, correct. The divine monks must be focused on culminate their merit, unlike an old guy like me, have no relationship with Buddha, always running around all day. Fazan smiled. Senior is kidding. You and our Skysong temple have same origin. This was specially remembered by Master and Puktan Shishu. Come, please sit inside senior. Herald of Valor modestly declined several times, then went inside with him. Sha Danan watched them enter the cave, then he suddenly felt something. He turned and found it was Onera pulled him, and whispered, did you saw that? It seemed like the young Fazan is the leader of those Skysong monks. Sha Danan nodded. These days he met these righteous cultivators daily and saw many Skysong masters. He discovered although Fazan was young, but among the Fa generation of the Skysong monks at Billows Hill, Fazan was superior than the rest, has the leadership. He is the one who mostly speak. As for the older monk, they did not say anything. It seemed like Fazan is a talented disciple that Skysong had worked hard to train. But at this moment, he was only thinking the sudden glance when Fazan mentioned Puji, so he did not hear what Onera was mumbling, only heard what he said at the end. I don't think he is that great, his speech was wrong. Sha Danan startled, asked, what did you say? Onera peeped around, then whispered, I remember someone have told me before, if a Buddhist culminated his merit, peacefully ended, it is called Parinirvana. He said some rubbish passed away, sound really unclear making divine monk Puji brother Zhang, why your face looks so bad all of a sudden. Sha Danan was disconcerted, nodded to Onera with a forced smile, then returned to the Jadon's place. Onera stood there and could not figure out what happened. Just in a blink of an eye Sha Danan already at Billows Hill for half a month. During that period, the righteous cultivation and the Falcon heretics were still in confrontation. They often ran into each other at daytime, usually there will be battle. But what made the righteous cultivator puzzled is that the Falcon heretics seemed not willing to fight. After several rounds in battle they escaped. When they heard the Falcon were gathering in this desolate place, they thought it is most likely a discussion for a plan of how to harm the world, so the righteous cultivators came to eliminate the evil. But now here, they don't seem like planning it. If they are going to fight the righteous, they should come out and engage in battle. If they have heard there are 2 heads from Jadon among the righteous, and fear their strength is not enough, they should have retreat. But the Falcon heretics did not fight or retreat. With the large geographic of Billow Hills, the aerial targets are visible, but if needed to go into the ground and search for the Falcon heretics' nest, it is really not easy. With this delay, the days spent on the island extended. The righteous cultivators were wondering, what are the remaining Falcons planning to do on this remote island? For these days, Sha Danan followed his master and Shishongs to search for the Falcon heretics. Personally, his was worry that what should he do if he run into Bilu. But that was also weird. Clearly Bilu has already arrived at Billows Hill, but since the storm that night, she did not appear again. However, other Falcons, including Nyen Boss, Cynical Dialection and others who Sha Danan and Anon knew, appeared very frequently. It looked like they were searching for something. Even with Master Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis, hundreds years of cultivation, they found this was a bit troublesome. That day evening, they summoned the representatives of Skysong and Incense to discuss the matter. The one represents Skysong of course was Fazan. As for the one from Incense, was also a familiar person, Li Su. They both seemed to be the most outstanding out of the young generation. But in front of Master Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis, they were still being very respectful. After greeting, Master Vasp Kalo said lightly, "To Shiji, this time we righteous factions came to eliminate the Falcons, there will be many area that will rely on your help," the poor Taoist thanked in advance. Fazan and Li Su both bowed and said, "No, if there is anything required, Vasp Kalo Shishu please instruct." Tien Bolis waved his hand, let them sat down first, then said, "We don't need to talk any more rubbish. Until today, we already here at this desert island in East Sea for half a month. Although the remaining Falcons are already here, but their action is awkward, unable to figure out their intention. Don't know if Tushiji have any ideas." Fazan and Li Su looked at each other, then shook their heads. Vasp Kalo said to Li Su, "Li Shiji, this information was first released from your Incense Valley, may I ask does your honorable faction know Falcon's intention?" In front of this well-known senior master Vasp Kalo, proud was no longer on Li Su's face. He said immediately, "Reply to Vasp Kalo Shishu, this information was discovered unintentionally by my faction. After the Falcon was rebuilt, many of the remainers headed East Sea Billows Hill. But as for the intention, we don't know." Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis exchanged a glance. Fazan suddenly spoke. To Tu Shishu, based on what the young monk absorbed, the Falcon heretics went across the mountains and carefully searched each hills, very possible that they are looking something important. Vasp Kalo pondered, said, "Correct, Tien Shidi and I both have the same idea. But what are they looking for that is so important?" Tien Bolis frowned then said, "If that is the case, there is no way for us to figure it out. But the Falcon heretics are always dangerously vicious, once you return, you need to be vigilant. Morning we will speed up the searching, until we find Falcon heretics, hide out, then eliminate them all at once, remove the harm for the world." Fazan and Li Su replied, "Yes." After that, they discussed for a while, then Fazan and Li Su left. Seeing them left, Vasp Kalo suddenly said, "Tien Shidi, the potential of these 2 young men is really not bad." Tien Bolis slowly nodded. Master Vasp Kalo said, "Especially Fazan of Skysong Temple, I noticed his eye pupils are pure black while there is soft gold light on the side, the eyes are warm and static, probably already having high achievement in Skysong Incantation, Fa'an Wisdom." Tien Bolis laughed coldly. "Don't underestimate that Li Su. Although he remained humble in front of us, I heard my useless disciple said, his cultivation in Kongsang Mountain and Dark Drake Cave is not necessarily worse than Fazan. Vasp Kalo snorted. For hundreds of years, Skysong Temple and Incense Valley desired to replace Jadon as the leader of righteous. Now they cultivated such talented disciples and sent them out, they are probably demonstrate to us. Tien Bolis glanced at him, suddenly said, doesn't matter, with Vasp Kalo Shishong's talented disciples, of course there is no need to fear them. Vasp Kalo's face changed, said coldly, Tien Shidi, what do you mean by that? Tien Bolis stood up, said lightly, what mean can I have by that? My house got a stupid disciple and he won several matches during Seven Peaks tournament with luck, then he was able to follow your talented disciple to travel. But unfortunately in Falcon Place, after the battle with the Falcon heretics, he was abandoned in that ancient cave. If not because weak people have strong life, I am afraid I can never see him again. Anger flashed across Vasp Kalo's face, said, Tien Shidi, you need to say thing correctly. What abandoned in the ancient cave? When Kevin returned, I carefully interrogated him. The situation really was because Anon of Bamboo Height was seriously injured, and there was no sign of your disciple after days of searching. Also there are many nether spirits and Yasho under Forsaken Abyss, so it was forced to give up. How does this become intentionally abandoned? Near the end of his words, his voice became louder. Tien Bolis has no sign of stepping back, glanced at him then shouted, HMPH, if your disciple was left there without knowing living or dead, won't you rage into heaven? Their voice became loud, and issued to the outside of the cave, caused the Jadon disciples to pop their heads and look into the cave. Tien Bolis and Vasp Kalo were cultivated after all, they would not do anything rude in front of the younger generation. Tien Bolis snorted, then left without looking back. After a moment, Kevin and Bei came in. They were Master Vasp Kalo most valued disciples, only they dared to go near Master Vasp Kalo when he is in a bad mood. Kevin said carefully, Master, how come argued with Tien Shishu again? Bei mumbled indignantly, this person is very stringy, does not behave like a senior. Vasp Kalo shouted, shut up. Bei was surprised, lowered his head, said, yes, Master. Vasp Kalo looked at him, then turned to Kevin, said, he is still remembering that day you gave up searching Sha Danan. Kevin was stunned. Vasp Kalo snorted. Don't just think that he seems like not really value that disciple, that is only when it is inside his house. At outside, he always protects the weak. Moreover, that Sha Danan had earned honor for him at this Seven Peaks tournament, he was very pleased by it. Then he paused, said to Kevin, do you know, this time Sha Danan is able to survive through the disaster and return safely, it gives you benefit. Kevin did not understand immediately, he said, what? Vasp Kalo coldly laughed, aren't you in relationship with his daughter Hidi? Kevin blushed. Vasp Kalo said, although I asked Head Shishong to talk for you, and he also reluctantly allows you two to be together. But based on his action today, he clearly still remember it. If not because Sha Danan returned alive, you are going to have hardship in the future. Kevin realized, nodded, thank you Master for helping disciple. Vasp Kalo waved, then slowly walked to the entrance, looked at the cave where Tien Bolis lived. There was no emotion on his and he was silent. But when Bei and Kevin looked at him, they could see his eyes were shining, pondering something. Chapter 63, Falcon. Ah, a soft cry, Sha Danan woke up from dream. He gasped quietly in the darkness, his entire body was wet with sweat. Over these days, starting from the time when he heard Fazan talked about Puji, Sha Danan began to have the nightmare dream that he had when he was young. The scene of the village massacre that had carved into his heart has rose on him, swallowed him. The fire stick was still laying by his side. On the body of the stick, there was a familiar coolness, everything was same as the past. However, after that, Sha Danan could feel, the strange esper that tied on his right arm was distributing warm energy into his body, that is opposite of the fire stick. He suddenly choked. In the darkness, the place where no one could see, he quietly curled up. Who know, a person bearing too many secrets, can be so tiring. In the darkness, other people were peacefully sleeping. There were disciples outside of the cave as night watch, so everyone were reassured. Listening to their calm and familiar sound of breathing, Sha Danan was startled. At far, there was a small, and even in the dream, it still contains her unique gentle sound. The darkness blocked the eyesight, but Sha Danan felt he can see clearly, that beautiful girl was smiling, in this tranquil night, sweetly dreaming. But, who is it in her dream? He reached out his hand, softly holding the fire stick, placed it in front of his chest, tightly cuddled it. It was like only the fire stick can be with him, never abandon him. Faintly, he remembered the pair of peacefully died fox spirits. If it was me, do I have the courage to die together with the loved one? He thought quietly in the darkness. The sun rose from the east, the wind blew from the sea. This day, the clouds were thin, a good sunny weather. The people under the house of Bamboo Peak left their cave, then fly to the depth of the Billows Hill with their espers, hoping they can find the Falcon heretics. Hidi was leading in the front with her phoenix soul, sparking red light. Xavion and Hidaji followed closely behind. Amandla and Sha Dan in flight at the rear. In their house, save for Xavion who was still using sword, 10 tigers, others were using silk, or blush, or even the strange and funny dices and fire stick, very noticeable among the Jadon disciples that were using swords. But this place is not Mount Jadon after all, at Billows Hill, not to mention the Falcon, even among the righteous, several people from other factions were using all kinds of esper. But when some nosy people judged other people's espers when they are bored, an expert pointed out, among the espers at Billows, the strangest esper is the gambling dice belong to one of the disciples in Jadon House of Bamboo Peak, while the most rustic esper is the fire stick that also belonged to one of the disciples in Jadon House of Bamboo Peak. Clearly the leadership of Jadon has brought many unique followers, not to be underestimated. If Tien bullies hear such comment, what will he think about it? The righteous disciples flew around in groups. Along with the wind of the Billows Hill, the colorful light shinging, very pretty. Sha Danan took a glance around him, seeing the people of righteous spread out in fan shape. Near him to the right, Donz's yards away, there were a group of girls in plain clothes, they were the female disciples of Bamboo Height. Anon was also among them. With her clothes and hair fluttering in the wind, matching her cold and beautiful face, she was like a celestial. Sha Danan's heart was moved, he quickly turned his head away. On the other side, another dozens yards away, there were disciples of Dragon Head Peak, about 6 or 7 people. Kevin and Bay were among them. Bay was also looking at him. He smiled and waved his hand. Sha Danan smiled in reply. There was a group of people following the Dragon Head Peak disciples, seemed like they were the disciples of Sunrise Peak. Then at this moment, Hidi in the front suddenly issued a clear whistle. Sha Danan looked forward and saw Hidi held her incantation mark while the phoenix soul flashed with red light. Zoom, carrying her pretty figure, it rised into the sky, much faster than before. Xavion was surprised. He knew this Xiao Shimei was energetic. The opportunity to come outside is rare, unlike the Mount Jadon which has many restriction. Every time when she came out, she often flew around freely. Saran was worrying about this and have talked to her daughter about this couple times already. Before they departed this morning, Saran also reminded Xavion to watch her. But Hidi grew up under everyone's love. Xavion's word can't get into her ears, how can he watch her? Out of choice, Xavion could only increase his speed to catch up. Sha Danan, Hidaji and others also drove their espers and followed closely behind. In a blink of an eye, they were distant away from the people of Dragon Head Peak and Bamboo Height. Sha Danan increased his speed and caught up to Hidi. He peered at her from 1 yard away. Heidi's face was filled with smile and excitement. She was in red clothes, matching her phoenix soul, it was very pretty. Among the howl of the wind, there was a joyful laughter from Hidi. Sha Danan's heart was heated as he heard it. Xiao Shidi, suddenly the voice of Xavion issued. Sha Danan quickly turned his head around, asked, "What's the matter, Da Shishang?" Xavion was driving his giant sword, smiling. Xiao Shidi, can't imagine your cultivation improved so fast, reaching this degree in such a short time. Sha Danan was grateful. Da Shishang, it is because of your teaching. Xavion shook his head, smiled, I am not worthy to take this credit. Look at what just happened, you flew much faster than me, 4th and 6th. Sha Danan now discovered, he had increased his speed to catch up to Hidi and did not notice he had flown past the 3 Shishangs. But Xavion and Hidaji were calm, if they are really going to fly, they are not going to be worse than him. Sha Danan blushed, said, Da Shishang, I. He was only half finished, Hidi had turned her head. Filled with smile, looking at Sha Danan, happily shouted, Xiao Fan, flying like this is comfortable right? Look, how high the sky is, how blue it is. Sha Danan turned his head toward her, took a deep breath, and smiled. The sky was clear blue, allowing one to relax. But, how can this able to compare to a smile of a beloved girl? Hidi flew against the wind, her hair flew. Above them there was clear blue sky, below them there was green mountain, at far there was a boundless deep blue ocean. Seeing it from far, the sky and ocean became one. This painting-like landscape was very beautiful. Hidi was in a good mood. She smiled then moved closer to him. Seeing Hidi suddenly flew near him, Sha Danan looked at her, said, Shiji, what it is? Hidi smiled. Xiao Fan, do you still remember the time when we caught Ash? Sha Danan was a little confused. Yes, what it is? Hidi reached out her hand, grabbed his arm, smiled, let's go. Sha Danan was puzzled, then Heidi's esper suddenly sunk, charged downward. Sha Danan hurriedly descended his esper and followed her. Behind them, Xavion and others were quite far away and did not hear their conversation. They were unaware and with the speed of the espers, they went past them. The three of them immediately halted. Turned around, they saw the Xiao Shimei and Xiao Shidi flew into the mountain forest below them. They shook their heads and smiled bitterly, then quickly followed them. The order from the masters is to search for the falcon remainers, searching in the forest is just the same. However, the distance between them and Sha Danan and Hidi has increased. Sha Danan followed Hidi closely. Soon they reached the forest. Hidi laughed, turned her head said, Xiao Fan, hurry. After that, Phoenix Soul spun around like a snake under her pretty figure. Flashed with red light and flew into the forest. Sha Danan's blood boiled as he was watching the red figure before him. Throwing away other thought, he flew straight downward. The forest on this hill is very much the same as others on Billows, ancient woods are everywhere, towering straight to the sky. On the ground, there are also a lot of bushes and brambles, difficult to a place to land. Once the two of them entered the forest, the surrounding turned quiet immediately. There is no more screaming of the wind next to their ears. Fresh smile of the woods hit against their faces. With smile on her face, Hidi stood on Phoenix Soul, traveled swiftly among countless of woods in this ancient forest. Sha Danan watched the back of the beautiful red figure that flew swiftly between the thick leaves, accompanied by the sharp whistle of the wind. She was like the most beautiful fairy in the world, danced the most beautiful posture in this wonderland, ancient forest, the world filled with the joyful cheer of the leaves. That figure, like light, very close to the trunk of the giant tree. It seemed extremely dangerous, but with the gentle grace, it softly slid past, without being touched. That figure, like imagination, like dream, also like the youth time, the cheerful laughter spread across the green mountain and water. He opened his arms with a grin. The fire stick was shining with green light, carrying him, chasing her, flying across this ancient and silent forest. Just like, this moment, will stay like this, and never end. The sky had become gloomy. The clouds got thicker. Sha Danan took back his eyes, thinking that the ocean is very different than the central plain. It was clear sunny day a moment ago, now it had turned cloudy. He and Hidi had flew in the thick forest for long time, but still couldn't find the people of Falcon. Finally they arrived at a small mountain ridge. Hidi spotted a small stream below them. Additionally they had flew for the entire morning, so she and Sha Danan landed and now they were washing their faces with the stream water. The stream meandered through the ancient forest. The water was shallow and clear. There are many round cobblestones in the water, very pretty under the glow of the clear wave of water. On the sides of the stream there was sand and rocks, farther away was thick forest. Looking at it from here, the forest seemed endless. Xiao Fan, Hidi suddenly called. Sha Danan turned to her, discovered that Hidi had found a very pretty stone in the water while she was washing her face. She showed it to Sha Danan joyfully said, "Is this stone pretty?" Sha Danan took a glance at the stone. The stone was only about the size of a thumb, with 3 color strips revolved neatly around it like ribbons, really is pretty. He smiled, lifted his head and looked at Hidi, was about to answer, but he couldn't say anything. That familiar, beautiful, smiling face was looking at him. The water still had not wiped away from her face after the wash. A crystal drop of water slipped down from her white face with gentleness, and yearned not to leave from her soft lips. And finally with a touching gracefulness, softly fell off. And at that pair of bright eyes, several water drops also formed on her long eyelashes, just like tears, and also similar to the white pear flower after rain, stunning and touching. Hidi scolded, "Weren't I asking you?" Sha Danan awoke. "What?" Hidi showed the stone in front of his eyes, said, "Pretty." Sha Danan took a deep breath, quietly, but it was like the voice came from his deepest soul, said, "Very pretty." Hidi nodded with a smile, and took out a silk cloth, cleaned the water off from the face, then carefully rubbed the stone, putted it into her clothes. After that, she turned to Sha Danan with the most beautiful smile in his eyes, said, "When we return, I will give this stone to Brother Chi, he is going to be very glad." The sky of Billows Hill seemed darkened even more at this moment. Sha Danan stood there, frozen and static, his head was lowered. Hidi walked for a few steps, then discovered there was no sound behind her. She turned around and saw Sha Danan was still standing there, not moving. She said with a little astonishment, "Xiao Fan, hurry." Sha Danan slowly lifted his head. His face slowly showed a smile, but strangely, his lips were trembling, said softly, "Shiji, we are going too fast, why don't we wait for Da Shishang and others?" Hidi snorted, said unconcernedly, "Don't bother with them, let's follow this stream. Going to the upstream directly, see if there are any Falcon the Ives, and," she covered her mouth and laughed, "and see if there are more beautiful stones. What is it that is like the feeling of a body burning? What is it that has the impulsion like heaven hell? So the nether flame of demon burning in the heart, burning down every single soul and spirit inside the body." He lowered his head, with his voice became choked, he said quietly, "Okay." Phoenix soul tied around her waist, became every more beautiful combined with her red figure. The two of them had walked for half an hour along this small stream. On the way, Hidi was relaxed, looking at everywhere, while Sha Danan quietly followed behind her. This stream did not seem to be large, the length was not short. Walked for a long time, they still haven't found the head of the stream. In front of them it was another small mountain, the stream was coming from that mountain. Walking for the entire day, Hidi was a little tired. She said to Sha Danan, "Xiao Fan, it is not early. We will check the mountain stream, if still no discovery, we will return." Sha Danan nodded quietly. Hidi took a look at this Xiao Shidi, she was a little puzzled, but she did not mind it and continued walking. The two of them soon reached the turn of the stream. They were surprised. Behind the stone wall, it was an extremely large cave, reached the height of 10 yards. The stream came from this cave. Because the stone wall had blocked their view, not to mention flying in the air, they could not see the cave if they were just a little farther away. The cave was very secret. Hidi frowned, said to Sha Danan, "Do we need to go in there and check?" Sha Danan took a glance at the cave. Except for some light at the cave entrance, it was pitch dark inside, his heart was uneasy. These days, especially after he left the mountain, he went into 2 caves. One was Cave of Fangs at Kengsong Mountain, another one was Dark Drake Cave outside the Laguna Collective, both did not give him good impression. Now seeing this cave, it was natural for him to hate it. Addition he was in a very bad mood, he said, "Shiji, I think it does not seem to be anyone living in here, why don't we return?" Hidi nodded, said, "Okay. That's what I thought also, let's." When she was half finished, wind-piercing sounds suddenly came from above their heads. Just a moment, there were a lot of people flying to their direction. Sha Danan and Hidi immediately raised their heads, then their faces quickly turned pale. Based on the dressing of the people in the sky, they were the Falcon. As for the numbers, they were no less than couple dozens. The two were terrified. Hidi knew there were many powerful people in the Falcon. If they escape through flying, it will be hard for them to get away. In this dangerous situation, they can only take a risky path. She pulled Sha Danan's hand and went into the dark cave. Darkness swallowed their figures. Soon after, the Falcon heretics landed near the mountain stream. After that, one of them lightened up the torch. Everyone entered the cave. Sha Danan and Hidi who were hiding near the entrance could only went deeper into the cave. Both of their hearts were hanging in midair. The difference of strength between the two sides was too wide. If they are discovered, they have no power to offer resistance. Fortunately the Falcon were in high number, and did not expect there could be anyone from the righteous to be inside the cave. Their footsteps and chatting have covered the two sound of movement. The empty ground in the center of the cave has brightened up. Sha Danan and Hidi stopped, hid in deeper place where the light could not reach, and held their breath. Sha Danan took a peer and saw the Falcon formed a semicircle, each of them found themselves a large rock to sit on. Some rough people just sat on the ground. The Falcon followers were very different than the righteous. There were many with strange appearance. Cynical dialection who Sha Danan has a very strong impression was also sitting among them. Next to him were Nian Boss, Lu Gao, Lin Feng and the unknown name woman. Other than that, there was an unfamiliar young man standing behind them. Sha Danan never saw him before. Hidi suddenly whispered next to his ear, Xiao Fan, look at the falcon, seem like they have a lot of factions. Sha Danan's ear itched, but did not think much about it. He nodded and took a look. Just like Hidi said, the falcon roughly formed a semicircle and faced the same direction, but they were sitting in groups. The difference of factions was very clear. At this moment, a deep voice said, everyone, please quiet for a moment. The falcon quieted down, seemed like the owner of this voice has high authority. Sha Danan was a bit far away, could not distinguish whose voice is it. He reached out his neck, and looked at the scene. Then he felt movement next to him. Hidi was also poking her head out. The torch quiet burning on the stone wall. Suddenly a dark-skinned tall man rose up, facing to that direction, said loudly, Herald, this time, Vim, gathered us at this desolated island, saying there is a rare beast, Mindrat menants, that appear every 3,000 years. But searching for it for so many days, there is no single cow hair, yet draw those annoying righteous to here, bothering us. May I ask what should we do? Sha Danan startled, asked Hidi quietly, what is Mindro menants? Hidi thought for a moment, then shook her head, I don't know either. The two looked at the open ground again. With a person started it, many people began to agree. Cynical dialection's cultivation was not high, but his temper was the worst, and had the loudest voice. Correct, Master Vim, he's Senior Highness, of course no need to worry about such small matter. But asking us to suffer here without reason, why is that? At least need to give me an explanation. Nian Boss noticed he was being rude and about to pull him to quiet him. At this moment, when everyone was discussing, suddenly there was a sweet but yet cold woman voice, do you really want to know the reason? When this voice issued, Sha Danan was shocked, and his body reached out a little. Under the shining of the torch, the place where the falcons were facing, a girl in green dress slowly rose up. It was Bilu. Chapter 64, Master Vim. Put the surprise Sha Danan had when he saw Bilu aside, the lousy falcons immediately quiet down when Bilu spoke. Even the fearless cynical dialection did not make any sound at this moment. All of a sudden, no one dared to speak to her. But after a moment, someone coughed, then said slowly, Miss Bilu, I have a few words, don't know should I say it. Sha Danan looked at that direction and saw the person who just spoke was the unfamiliar young man that stood behind Nian Boss. Nian Boss and others were surprised, seemed they did not expect that young man would spoke. Nian Boss frowned tightly, said quietly to that young man, Xiao Zhou, is there a place for you to speak in here? Bilu took a glance at that young man, did not recognize him, and asked Nian Boss, who is he? Nian Boss immediately made a smiling face, he is a new recruit of our Bloodfurger. Surname is Zhou, name is Kai. Bilu snorted, doesn't matter, allow him to speak. That Xiao Zhou young man showed no sign of frightened. He came out from the crowd, said calmly, Miss Bilu, everyone here knows, you are, Master Vim's beloved daughter, so everyone respect you. Master Vim summoned us to here to find Mindrat menants, we are bounden to come here. But, he paused, a kind smile appeared on his face, but his tone became cold, but the Mindrat menants is not yet to be found, while the righteous number is increasing, even 2 out of the 7 heads of Jadon have came, we are not their opponent. At this situation, Vim still let us work blindly without explanation, I am fear some of our friends may ask, are the Vim planning to use the righteous to eliminate us? Everyone rose into discussion, several people who were behind Bilu stood up, it is appeared they were the Vim disciples. Except for the Vim, the falcon had no intention to criticize this young man after the surprise, but turned to Bilu with alert. The sound of discussion was rising up. Sha Danan couldn't help but felt worry for Bilu, at the same time he thought about what the young man said. They were all falcon, but there were many factions, perhaps the Vim. As he was thinking, Bilu said coldly, who are you, dare to sow discord here? Xiao Zhou smiled, facing this powerful, beautiful girl, he still had no sign of fear, said lightly, I am only an unknown child, joined the holy faction out of admiration. Compared to Miss Bilu, it is the difference of sky and earth. But now the righteous are waiting for a chance to kill us, while Vim is one of the 4 major factions, at this situation they are our leader. But if they leave us at this dangerous spot without concern, isn't it really unjustifiable? Even Sha Danan could feel it. Although this Xiao Zhou spoke in a kind tone, each words are aiming at the Vim, meaning to stir up the tension is obvious, but his intention was remain in question. Seeing the surprised look of Nian Boss, it seemed he is not under the Bloodfurger's control. Other falcons were even more agitated, their voice was getting louder, and their faces showed hostility to the Vims. Bilu frowned, then took a step backward, turned her head and quickly talked to the person behind her. Sha Danan looked at that direction. But the light of the torch was not so bright. A large man was next to Bilu, and behind the large man, it seemed there was a middle-aged man standing. However, the place he was standing was dark and covered by the large man, Sha Danan could not see his face. Bilu talked to that person, then turned her head and took a step forward, coldly glanced at the crowd. Her beautiful face was as cold as ice and frost. Under the golden light of the burning torch, she had a sorrow and lonely beauty. The talking quickly died down, everybody's eyes fixed on her. Everyone, her voice resounded in the cave. Vim is like everyone, we are all disciple of the holy faction, worship Nether Mother in Heaven Vidyaraja, no matter how strong we Vim are, we will never commit such act that against our faction. So please rest assured. After this being announced, most of the falcons were relaxed. Nian Boss let out a long breath, then quickly stepped forth and pulled Xiao Zhou, whispered, "Have you said enough already?" Xiao Zhou smiled to him, then said loudly, "If that is so, we are more rested. But Miss Bilu, please explain about Mindrat Menance. If we really can't find Mindrat Menance, then better allow us leave soon. Otherwise even the Vim has no intention to harm us, we will die in the hand of the righteous." Bilu and other Vims glared at him. But Xiao Zhou was still smiling, did not know he was in great trouble. Other falcons also shouted. "Correct. Exactly, Miss Bilu, please give us an explanation." Quote. When the noise got quieted by a little, Bilu removed her eyes from Xiao Zhou. She knew this isn't the time for arguing. She said, "Everyone, even if he did not mention it, we Vim will still give you guys an explanation. Actually this time we came to Billow Hills as for." Boom, the entire cave was suddenly shaking. Sha Danan and Hidi staggered. The falcons were very surprised, some of them shouted. What was that? Earthquake? But soon, they got their answer. The wind howled at the cave entrance. A powerful voice went into the cave like thunder roaring against their ears. "Falcon the Ives, hurry, come out and receive your death." Everyone were terrified. Sha Danan and Hidi exchanged a glance, they were glad that it was head of Dragon Head Peak, Master Vasp Kalo's voice. Sha Danan's heart was filled with admiration. There was a great distance from the entrance to hear, but Master Vasp Kalo's voice was very clear and wall shaking. This level of cultivation was far superior than his. The falcons looked at each other, soon someone screamed out, "This place is so well hidden, how can they find it?" Then Xiao Zhou yelled, "Miss Bilu, this is a critical situation. We were here because the Vim gathered our allies to Billow's Hills. Now we meet such great danger, what should we do?" The people also said, "Correct, Miss Bilu, say something." Bilu took a deep breath, while the sound of piercing wind issued wave after wave at the outside of the cave. It appeared the people from Righteous were coming here after they heard the news. The color of Bilu's face darkened. She took a step forward, said, "Everyone, I do not know how the Righteous knows we are here. I, as Master Vim's only daughter, also trapped here in this dangerous situation. Is anyone still suspect us?" Most people quiet down. Then the tall man next to Bilu stepped forth, said in a deep voice, "Everyone, there is a great treat before us, why don't we work together as one and resist the enemy? With our strength combined, we may not lose to those hypocrite outside." Everyone nodded. Actually at this moment, there was no other choice. Although the cave is large, it is a dead end, no other exit. The falcons got ready and encouraged themselves, then rushed out at once. Soon, the sound of espers crushing and people cursing filled outside. The originally crowded cave only left with Bilu from Vim and the mysterious man who stood in the shadow. Sha Danan was glad but at the same time worried for Bilu. He knew she is a heretic from Falcon, they can never be walked on the same path. However, they experienced life and death together for several times during the journey. He had developed a different feeling for this obstinate girl. Bilu frowned tightly. When she was about to turn her head and talk to the man in the shadow, her eyes caught that there was still another person standing alone here and did not confront the enemy. It was Xiao Zhou. Reason why he was left behind was unknown. Xiao Zhou had fanned the people to go against the Vim, surely Bilu would not have any good impression on him. Her face immediately darkened, smiled coldly. You are not helping your allies but stay here, what are you planning? Xiao Zhou's face was still remaining calm, could not see the sign of fear when facing the threat of righteous. He smiled. I am just here to see, are the Vim really going to advance with the worthless pawn like us, or letting us to be the ashes under the cannon? Bilu's face froze, was about to argue. The man in the shadow suddenly said, you are not under our holy faction, who are you? Bilu was surprised. Xiao Zhou was also shocked. His eyes glanced at the shadow, his eyes shot out alert, and said in a deep tone, who is this person, how can you say thing like this? I am a disciple of the Bloodfurger. Is it because I spoke out against you, you guys are going to slander me? Sha Danan and Hidi were also surprised. They did not expect it will turn out like this. But there was another question in Sha Danan's mind. The man in the shadow, his voice was familiar, but he could not remember where he heard it. The man who stood in the shadow said lightly, the Bloodfurger was the leader of our holy faction 800 years ago without doubt. But now they were already weakened. With your potential and cultivation, Nian Boss is far behind you, how can he adopt you as disciple? If he really has this ability, the Bloodfurger will already come back again. Xiao Zhou snorted. You haven't seen me fight, how do you know my level of cultivation? That person seemed smiled. To know your level of cultivation, is there a need to see you fight? When the old Taoist Vasp Silo used pure essence to channel his voice into the rocks, shocking the vein of the mountain. His intention was to terrify us. The one that were less cultivated will have their souls shocked, and unable to stay steady. Nian Boss was also one of them. But you stood there like nothing happened, this level of cultivation was obvious, how hard is that to see through it? The color of Xiao Zhou's face changed. He looked at the man in the shadow for a while, then said, can't imagine Falcon really is hiding skilled people inside. Who are you, sir? Bilu shouted, flew in midair, said angrily, die. All in a suddenly, white light flashed with soft fragrance in the dark cave. The white flowers danced in front of Bilu like flying snow. However, even with the brightness of the flowers, it could not shine at the man in the shadow. They still could not see his face. Xiao Zhou did not react slowly. He took a step back and grabbed at the empty air. After a long clang, he pulled out a glaring celestial sword. The most eye-catching part was the 7 brilliant stars that carved on the bright sword. Huh, the man in the shadow mumbled, Nava sword. When he was speaking, Bilu and Xiao Zhou were already battling in midair. With the flower and sword flying across, the large cave seemed shrank. Sha Danan could guess the man named Xiao Zhou was probably from Righteous, he was a bit worried for him. But when he was watching the fight, his eyes always peered at Bilu. His heart was in contradiction. He only wished the fight could result as a drew quickly and allow Bilu to escape. Hidi suddenly whispered, that man Xiao Zhou is probably a disciple from Jadon. Sha Danan was surprised, said, what, you know him? Hidi shook her head, took a glance at the fight, then said, I heard mother mentioned about it before, Nava sword is a famous divine sword in the main house Peak of Widows. Daol Shen Shibo used it before. Later I heard it was given to. Before she finished, Bilu shouted. Heart-ending flowers spread out and filled the entire cave with shining white flowers. And like sharpened wall of light, it crushed at Xiao Zhou. Sha Danan had seen Bilu casted this magic before. He knew the power of it. He couldn't help but felt worry for Xiao Zhou. Xiao Zhou frowned, and dashed a yard backward. His right hand held the incantation mark while his left hand held his right wrist. It was like holding 1,000 tons of energy, but also like tracing wild grass. The fingers created air-piercing sound, and drew a tai chi just in a blink of an eye. When Sha Danan and Hidi saw it, there was no more question. Xiao Zhou is a Jadon disciple. The magic he used was Jadon's pure essence. Instantly, the Nava sword charged upward and shined brightly. It stood on the center of the tai chi. After a second, Nava sword shot out while the tai chi's aura circled around it, increased its momentum. Then, the two espers crushed on each other's in midair. Boom! The flare that caused by the crush of the two espers spread in the cave. The stone cave could not withstand the power hit, some rocks began to fall down. Sha Danan and Hidi could also feel the shaking of the surrounding. They almost fell on the ground. His heart was filled with admiration for Xiao Zhou's cultivation on pure essence. This level of cultivation is stronger than those Jadon disciples he had met. Bilu's wall of white light dispelled. Her face was a bit pale, appeared to be in disadvantage. Sha Danan knew her for a while. His heart felt terrible, and he knew Bilu will not stop so easily. Just as he thought, anger flashed on Bilu's face. She retrieved heart-ending flower, while her hand reached to her waist, holding a pretty, golden bell. Xiao Zhou frowned, facing it cautiously. The girl who stood before him was young, but her cultivation was far out of his expectation. He used most of his strength, but it could only hurt her a little. Based on what she is doing, it seemed like she had an even more powerful esper. And what he feared the most was the man that stood in silently in shadow, whom power was unpredictable. The clear bell rang in this cave that filled with killing, very inconsistent with the picture. Bilu lifted into the air. Both hands waved softly. The golden bell slowly flew before her, sounding melodiously. Sha Danan looked at the beautiful girl who stood in midair. Her arms were soft as if there were no bones. The golden bell spun slowly between her hands. Ding, ding, ding. Xiao Zhou was surprised that he was spellbound by the ringing and forgot he was at the edge of life and death. If not because of his many years of cultivation, his would already lost his mind. This small bell has the ability to attract one's soul. At that moment of hesitation, an anger rose in his mind. He was surprised and would not listen to it any longer. He shouted, "Die devil!" His shout shook the walls, covered the ringing of the bell, while Nava's sword shot out like lightning. Bilu's pale face appeared to be a bit tired, but she did not retreat when she saw the Nava's sword was coming. Her right fingers flicked. The lupin bell sent forth and crushed with the Nava's sword. Xiao Zhou's body was shocked. It was like the music of demon was sent from the Nava's sword and pierced through his ears. Sha Danan and Hidi were surprised, and about to assist. But Xiao Zhou's face suddenly calmed. He shouted. The Nava's sword brightened again in counterattack. Bilu was extremely pale on the other hand. Her eyes were a bit dull, seemed lost her mind and lacked the ability to resist. She was about to be killed by Nava's sword. Sha Danan's mind became empty. Without much consideration, he came out, cried, "No!" Before his word ended, a shadow passed by, after that a purple energy flashed then disappeared. Xiao Zhou was being hit back. He fell on the ground, fresh blood immediately came out from his mouth. The Nava's sword flew back and stabbed into the solid rock. Sha Danan and Hidi were terrified. They dashed to Xiao Zhou. Hidi was about to raise up the phoenix soul. However, despite his injury, Xiao Zhou grabbed them, said in a husky voice, don't, Zhang Shidi, Tian Shimei, that person's cultivation is too high. You are not his opponent." Sha Danan startled. Hidi already couldn't help but asked, "How do you know our names?" Xiao Zhou paused, and looked to the front. The two also felt something. They turned and faced Bilu. A middle-aged man stood in midair with his back facing Sha Danan and others. He helped Bilu to come down, said kindly, "Yaoer, this lupin bell is a divine artifact left by Lady Jinling. Your cultivation is not enough yet, very easy to get backfire by it. From now on, don't use it lightly." Bilu's face returned to normal at this point. She said quietly, "Yes, Dad." Sha Danan and others were startled. Xiao Zhou seemed got better. He glared at that person's back, said in a low voice, "So you are the archlord of one of the four great Falcon factions, Master Vim." That middle-aged man turned around and smiled. They could finally see his face clearly. With his thin eyebrows, square face, and scholarly eyes, he looked very different than those fierce and rough Falcon. But Sha Danan was even more surprised. He said blankly, "You." The Master Vim, with a middle-aged scholar looking, is the person who told him the secret of the fire stick, below the Kongsang mountain in a tea stall, Wanren Wang. A Taoist sword that was used by Zhuge Liang during Battle of Chibi. Also a name for a well-known sword, Sword of Dragon Spring, during Jade Dynasty. Chapter 65, Worries. Sha Danan stared at that middle-aged man, who is the greatest enemy of the righteous. His mind was in chaos. For the past days, he often have a little doubt on his belief, and it was all came from the conversation in the tea stall under Kongsang Mountain that day. And now, he met the person again. His feeling was very complicated, almost caused him to forget his current situation. Although he had forgotten, others did not. Xiao Zhou wiped away the blood from his mouth, managed to stand up, and whispered to Sha Danan and Hidi, "This person's cultivation is too high. We cannot face him directly. I will hold him, you two run." Then, he waved his hand. The Nava's sword, that was inserted into the rock, received the summon. It broke away from the stone and he returned to his hand. Master Vim took a look at Xiao Zhou, nodded with a thin smile, and said, Based on your cultivation, it appears you are the top of the Jade disciples. Can't expect there is a talented person like you in Jade other than Sha Danan. Not bad, not bad. Sha Danan was surprised, but found his Shiji and Xiao Zhou peered at him. His face flushed, don't know what to say for this moment. Xiao Zhou took a deep breath, and took a step forward. The Nava sword in his hand brightened. However, Master Vim made no move, he only stood there and smiled at them. Xiao Zhou knew this person as the toughest enemy he had met in his entire life. But there were Shidi and Shimei behind him. He could not run away from the battle. He could only hope he can hold him, allow his faction members to escape. Unexpectedly, when he tried to channel his energy, the blood in his chest rose. He couldn't hold it anymore, and spew out a mouthful of blood. Sha Danan and Hidi were surprised. They quickly supported him. Xiao Zhou's face was pale. He knew the hit that Master Vim did to him had shocked his inter-organ, Meridian was injured, therefore he could no longer cast any spells. He was frightened. One is that he knew he is in a hopeless situation, two is that he was worrying about the high cultivation of Master Vim that was shocking, the harm that he may do to the righteous is hard to predetermine. Master Vim glanced at him, said, you force yourself to continue fighting, is it that you want to hold me for a while and allow the other two to escape? Xiao Zhou snorted and did not answer. Hidi stood up and blocked before him, said angrily, evil heretic, don't think you can be complacent just because your cultivation is high, I am not fear you. Sha Danan was surprised. Master Vim could injure Xiao Zhou severely with one move. Anyone could see his cultivation is extremely high. Three of them add together may not be his opponent. Seeing Heidi's fearless looking, he was a bit worried and grabbed her, signaled Hidi not to be rushed. Before Hidi react, this action was already in Master Vim and Bilu's eyes. Bilu's face darkened, snorted, glanced at Hidi then Sha Danan. She spoke. Sha Danan, is this she or Shiji Hidi you kept talking about? Hidi and Xiao Zhou were both surprised. Xiao Zhou frowned, said, Zhang Shidi, you know this pair of father and daughter? Sha Danan was quiet for a while, then said, yes. At this moment, Hidi suddenly cried out, ah! I recognize her. You are the devil who sneaked into our place that night, then was chased you to an island. You were saying you were looking for a person named Xiaofan. Then she stopped, her eyes glared at Sha Danan. Sha Danan's heart was terrible. This situation is what he have been fear of. Now it really appeared, he did not know how to deal with it. Master Vim was standing there, watching Sha Danan's complicated look. He still smiled and said, Mr. Zhang, after the talk below the Kongsang mountain, how are you these days? Sha Danan's mind was distracted, and ignored what he said. Xiao Zhou frowned, he was puzzled. Seeing the favor that Master Vim and Bilu have toward Zhang Shidi, their relationship is probably not simply. But Jade's rule is very strict, getting into any relationship with the Falcon is furthermore forbidden. But he did not know what are their relationship, if it violated the rule, then it will be far from good. But this is not the time for interrogation. The three of them were in a hopeless situation. Xiao Zhou managed to focus his mind, and turned to Master Vim, about to speak. However, when Master Vim saw him, he spoke first. You forced yourself to channel the vigor and injected the spirit into Nava's sword. Are you trying to use your remaining strength to hold me and allow your faction members to escape? Xiao Zhou was shocked. His face was dead as ashes. He did not expect Master Vim can be that sharp-minded. With his cultivation, plus his awareness, Xiao Zhou and his friends will not survive. But Master Vim smiled. You don't need to feel hopeless, I have no intention to make it difficult for you. What? Xiao Zhou and Hidi were confused. Sha Danan also looked at him with surprise. Master Vim looked at Bilu, then at Sha Danan, he smiled. Mr. Zhang, that day in Kongsang Mountain's Forsaken Abyss, you showed true love to Yaoer and experienced life and death together. The color of Sha Danan's face already changed. Xiao Zhou and Hidi were also looking at him with weird eyes. He was rushed and said, You are lying. At this moment, Sha Danan felt the eyes of Bilu. But in her pair of bright eyes, it was hidden with sadness. He suddenly recalled the stormy night with the heaven and earth raging, and only she alone stayed with him. His heart softened and unable to continue. Master Vim continued. That day you unlocked Yaoer, solved the knot between us. We owe you a gratitude. He smiled. Today it will let three of you go as a respect to you. But when you return to Jade, you will be punished by those unreasoning old fools. Why don't you join my holy faction? I will value you, And you can also be together with Yaoer, isn't that? Shut up. It was a shout from Sha Danan. He couldn't bear it anymore. He pointed at Master Vim and shouted, "Come kill me. Even if I am to die, I will never join your falcon." Hidi was relieved. She clapped, "Nice one, Xiaofan." But Xiao Zhou was only glanced at Sha Danan lightly. His eyebrows were still locked. Master Vim shook his head, smiled, "Anyway, just let you decide. Long time ahead of us, you can consider it slowly." Finished, he took Bilu and flew out of the cave. Bilu turned her head and looked at Sha Danan before she left. Seeing her eyes, Sha Danan's angry heart filled hazy confusion. Xiao Zhou took notice of Sha Danan's reaction. His eyebrows frowned tighter. Master Vim and his daughter soon vanished in the darkness of the cave. A moment later, the noise at outside rose suddenly. It seemed the righteous have been assaulted. After that, the wind whistled with air-piercing sound, seemed like many people were flying into the sky. Master Vasp Kalo's powerful voice shook the surround, said, "Who are you, sir? With the cultivation this high, why don't you dare to come down and fight this Taoist?" This is obviously saying to Master Vim. But with the wind howling and no bodying answering, Master Vim and Bilu were already long gone. The cave was also quiet. Hidi noticed Xiao Zhou's face was pale. She asked concernedly, "Zhou Shishang, are you all right?" Which house are you from?" Sha Danan saw Xiao Zhou was about to fall. He also came and supported him. Xiao Zhou glanced at him. Sha Danan had an uncomfortable feeling and lowered his head. Xiao Zhou sighed lightly, and smiled to them, "You don't need to call me Zhou Shishang. That is the fake name that I used for mixing into the falcon. My surname is not Zhou." Hidi, "Ah, then you are." Xiao Zhou smiled, but then eyebrows jumped, it seemed because of his wound. He immediately returned normal. He smiled. "I am disciple under the Jadon House of Peak of Widows, Master Doyal Shen. Surname Xiao, name Yikai." "What, you are Anu, Xiao Shishang." Xiao Zhou, who is also Anu, nodded with a smile. Sha Danan and Hidi looked at each others. They have been hearing this name for a long time. The night was dark. Countless of bright stars were sparkling above the Billows Hill, shining the world. In a well-hidden place, Master Vim came out slowly. Bilu was standing lonely on the hill, staring at the east of Billows. "That place is where the righteous stays." Master Vim sighed, and went behind her, said, "Yaoer, the night is cold, you need to be careful of your health." Bilu turned around quietly, forced a smile, "Yes, thank you, Dad." Master Vim asked, "You are thinking of that boy named Sha Danan?" Bilu blushed, but did not say anything. Master Vim kindly patted his daughter's shoulder, took 2 steps forward, said, "Today when I saw him, I discovered that his cultivation have been improved after going into Dark Drake Cave with you." Bilu startled, then said gladly, "Really?" Master Vim nodded. "I guess it is because he has some understanding after reading the first volume of Librews." Then he paused and smiled. "By the way, the Librews Volume 1 summary that you gave me from Blooddrop Cave, it benefited me a lot in cultivation after reading it." Bilu said happily, "Really?" Master Vim nodded. "Correct. Librews has a total of 4 volumes. Legend said there is the 5th one, but no one have read it. Since ancient time, our holy faction has 4 volumes. Unfortunately, most were lost. We Vim can have the glory of today, it is thanks to the previous Master Vim 300 years ago of obtaining the Librews 2nd volume." He paused for a moment, then said, "But the writing of the 2nd volume is mysterious and difficult even though it contains deep cultivation. It is because the crucial part of the incantation is following right after the summary of the 1st volume. That is why for several hundred years, we Vim can only share the world with Lupin, Longevity, and Venom. But from now on, heh." Bilu smiled. "Then I have to congrat Dad." Vim smiled and nodded. "You have render us a great help. Sent you to Kongsang Mountains Bloodfurger is originally a training, but also see if there is any artifact left behind by Senior Elder Blackheart. However, I did not expect you will bring back the Librews. This is much better than any espers." Bilu smiled, but her face soon darkened. Master Vim watched his daughter for a while, then laughed all of a sudden. Bilu blushed, scolded, "Dad." Master Vim smiled and shook his head, "Why are you worrying?" Bilu bit her teeth, said, "Dad, you saw it today, too." "How Sha Danan, that bastard, to his Shiji, I am only afraid." Master Vim said, "Afraid what? Afraid that he has no feeling for you." Bilu lowered her head. Master Vim said lightly, my thought is different than yours. Bilu was surprised, said, Dad, what did you say? Master Vim said, based on what I have seen today, Sha Danan really care about his Shiji. But at the critical moment in the fight between you and Xiao Zhou, he couldn't control himself and came out shouted without considering his own safety. Just with that, and also experiencing life and death together with you during his journey, maybe himself not even know, your place in his heart is no less than his Shiji. Bilu blushed again. It was even more charming under the color of the night. There was a happiness in her eyes that unable to conceal. Master Vim stroked through her hair, the love on his face was undoubtable, then he said, however, don't get happy so early. First of all, the difference of factions is the rift that he cannot overcome, moreover, the elders in Jadon will not allow him to have any feeling toward you. So today before I left, I proposally make the relation between you two to be a bit ambiguous. I see that Xiao Zhou's position in Jadon is quite high. With him to bring the word back, the Jadon must suspect Sha Danan. Therefore, his chance of seeking refuge on us is higher. Finished, he seemed he was very proud of what he done and laughed. Bilu also smiled, but soon taken back and quietly lowered her head. Master Vim frowned. What is it? Bilu hesitated, then said softly, I am worried that Xiaofan will need to suffer again. Master Vim snorted. If it is not sharpened, how do you know the sword is sharp? If he can't withstand such little suffering, not to mention that I will be worried to hand you over to him, even if he join my faction, I won't be value him. Bilu nodded slowly, but somehow, she was still a little worried. She looked toward the east, but only saw the sea of woods under the sky that blocked her view. The sudden appearance of Anu raised a disturbance within the Jadon. Master Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis were both surprised and delighted. From Anu, they found out the Falcons were searching for a celestial beast called Mindrat Menace, and also surprised to find out Archlord of one of the 4 great Falcon factions, Master Vim, was also here. Master Vasp Kalo nodded slowly, said dignifiedly, so that person is the new Master Vim of the Falcon, really is cultivated highly. Tien Bolis frowned, said, Yikai, how did you get into the Falcon? Anu smiled. That day I followed Master's order to sneak into Kongsang Mountain to investigate the Falcon, and found the remainers of the Falcon sect Bloodfurger were having activity. But after many investigation, the remainers of the Bloodfurger are not great enemies. They mentioned about their holy faction, it seemed the Falcon is about to make a big move. To seek the answer, I called myself Xiao Zhou. And because it was also the time they are recruiting, they saw me quite talented, I was easily got into the Falcon. There, with a little apology, he said to Tien Bolis, but Tien Shishu, that day when Zhang Shidi and Bamboo Heights Anon Lushime fell into Forsaken Abyss, I was assigned to the group against Skysong's Fazan Shishong. I was unable to help, I am really sorry. But fortunately Zhang Shidi have a strong life, he is safe. My heart can be relieved. Tien Bolis smiled. Doesn't matter, it can't blame on you. You don't need to be worried. Master Vasp Kalo snorted. Tien Bolis ignored him. Master Vasp Kalo said to Anu, but Yikai Shiji, this move is too dangerous. You know those Falcon the Ives are all dangerous and cunning. If something happens to you, we don't know what to report to head Shishong. Tien Bolis also nodded. Exactly, before we left, head Shishong was quite worrying about you since he lost track of you for several months. He asked us privately that we need to pay attention to your track. Anu's face darkened a little, shook his head, said, alas. It is my fault to cause Master to worry. Master Vasp Kalo smiled. Don't think too much, this time you made a great achievement. After we clean up the Falcon's remainers, when we return, head Shishong will not punish you, or maybe he will even reward you. Anu blushed. Vasp Kalo Shishu, you are kidding. Tien Bolis said lightly, this is no kidding. You have provided us a big help. But Yikai, don't do thing that dangerous again. Head Shishong very value you. After he ascend, the position of the faction head is most likely pass on to you. You are burdened with important duty, so don't be reckless again. Anu said solemnly, yes, thank you for the teaching from Vasp Kalo Shishu and Tien Shishu. Master Vasp Kalo nodded. Then that is it. I see that you are tired, you should rest early. Fortunately your wound did not harm your root of your meridian, otherwise it will be troubling. Seeing Master Vasp Kalo and Tien Bolis got up, Anu was also about to get up. Tien Bolis stopped him and shook his head, you are injured and should rest. This is just common manner, and since we are not in Mount Jadon, just ignore it. It was not proper for Anu to defy him, Also his body really is tired. He leaned back to the stone wall again, said, "Thank you Shishu, then forgive me not escorting you." Master Vasp Kalo waved his hand, and walked to the outside with Tien Bolis. When they reached the entrance, Anu suddenly called, "Tien Shishu." Tien Bolis startled, then turned around, asked, "What is it?" Anu leaned on the wall, smiled, "Look how forgetfully I am. Last year when I went to Bamboo Peak to visit Shishu, Surin Shushi mentioned that she wanted to get a large shell pearl from the southeast sea coast. I found one when I came to the East Sea. Do you want to have a look?" Tien Bolis pondered for a moment, then looked at Anu. He smiled, "If you didn't remind me, I would have already forgotten. It is lucky you remember, otherwise when I return to Bamboo Peak, I will be annoyed to death by your Su Shishu." Then, he went back to Anu. Master Vasp Kalo paused for a moment, but of course he won't ask about the pearl, so he left. Only Tien Bolis and Anu were remain in the cave. Tien Bolis was smiling, however, the smile disappeared when he sat in front of Anu. He peered behind, then said lightly, "Your Su Shishu's personality is always calm in the outside and impatient in the inside. She would already come to East Sea to find that large shell pearl 100 years ago. There is no one here now. What it is that you need to say?" Anu nodded, said to Tien Bolis, "Tien Shishu have good insight. I keep Shishu here is to talk about Sha Dan and Zhang Shidi who is under your house." Tien Bolis frowned, slightly surprised. He asked, "What about him?" Anu coughed, and lowered his voice. Tien Bolis leaned forward, listening. The cave was silent, only the whispering voice softly sounding. The word Shao here is E section is a surname, in first tone, different than Young which is a degree, in third tone. Chapter 66, The Past. The atmosphere had turned heavy. Tien Bolis slowly straightened his body, his face was unstable, unable to know what he is thinking. Anu quiet for a moment, then said, "Tien Shishu, I have been hesitated for quite a while, but it is not good to conceal it from you." Tien Bolis took a deep breath, nodded, "Shao Shiji, I know what you mean, thank you." Anu nodded, then thought of something, said, "Tien Shishu, I think that although Zhang Shidi knows Master Vim and his daughter, he doesn't seem fall into the evil, yet. However, the falcons are cunning, Zhang Shidi is also young, it will be dangerous most likely." Tien Bolis snorted, his face was cold as frost, said, "That animal, let's wait and see how I punish him." Anu glanced at him, said, "Tien Shishu, I have a word, but don't know should I say it." Tien Bolis said, "Say it." Anu said, "Yes, Tien Shishu, the reason why I talked to you privately about Zhang Shidi is that I hope you can solve this issue well before it gets serious. Vasp Kalo Shishu is in charge of punishment, his temper is also unyielding, if he find out, I am afraid Zhang Shidi, he is your disciple, and you must have spent much effort on him over the past years, if this becomes a huge issue, you and Vasp Kalo Shishu will not take any step back. So," then he lowered his voice, said, "If Zhang Shidi did not commit anything seriously wrong, just scold at him privately." Tien Bolis lifted his head, looked at him deeply, said, "Shao Shiji, you really have great leadership, no wonder why head Shishong value you so. It seems the position of the head of the faction is none other than you." Anu slightly lowered his head, said, "Tien Shishu you overpraised me." At this moment, Tien Bolis' face had already returned normal, smiled lightly, "All right. You should rest early, we Bamboo Peak will remember your kindness." Intentionally or not, his tone got heavier when he spoke the word, Bamboo Peak. Anu was a little confused, smiled, "Shishu is too polite." Tien Bolis nodded, rose up and left. Tien Bolis stood alone at a quiet place in the forest, hands behind his back. It was deep in night, the stars were shining and the moon was hanging in the sky. The bright moonlight shined past the thick forest leaves, sprayed on him. From the darkness, his eyebrows were frowned tightly, seemed like he was pondering something. At this moment, footsteps sounded behind him. Tien Bolis turned around and looked, startled, said, "You." It was his wife Surin. In this desolated night, silent forest, she walked quietly, it was like all attention have been drawn to her. It was like, after many years, the time did not wipe away her beauty. Surin went next to Tien Bolis, smiled, "You told Darren to call Xiaofan to here, but Shanfan is absent, I told him to go to Vajra's Herald of Vigor, he should be returned soon." Tien Bolis nodded, took a look at her, about to speak, but then stopped. Surin said lightly, Since when you saw Anu, you were frowning, what happened? Tien Bolis let out a long sigh, face relaxed a little, said, I know I can't conceal it from you. Then he told her about what Anu said about Sha Danan. Saran quietly listened to him until he finished, pondered for a moment, then she said, let's not talk about does Xiaofan knows Master Vim and his daughter, even if they know each other, using this to say Xiaofan have fallen into the falcon, or he is even a spy in Jadon sent by the falcon, I will never believe it. Tien Bolis snorted. I know this already. Hey, I adopted 6 disciples before, from oldest for 6th, none caused so many troubles, giving me such headache. Saran glanced at him, smiled, but from oldest to 6th, none gave you such honor at 7 Peaks tournament. Tien Bolis paused, but still not admitting defeat, he rolled his eyes, said, that is called honor. Being hit by thunder like a burned rock. Saran laughed. Oh my. Tien Shishong, I heard that 300 years ago when you participated in the 7 Peaks tournament, you were also only in the top 4. Tien Bolis was embarrassed by the old stuff that his wife took out, he said, isn't that because, that night before the contest I sneaked out with you to Peak of Widows, Rainbow Bridge, to watch stars and moon together, did not sleep for the entire night. I had no energy during the contest, how could I stand as Vanti Shishong's opponent? Boo, Saran scolded, but her face blushed, very tender, like it was back to that night. Vanti Shishong is gifted by heaven, extremely intelligent, in the disciples among our generation, none can be compared to him in cultivation beside for Doyle Shenhead Shishong. What are you? You already made your master very happy when you got into the top 4, you still want to defeat Vanti Shishong. Tien Bolis laughed, his mood got better, said, of course Vanti Shishong is much better than me. But you chose me instead of him, that means I have something that is better than him. Saran rolled her eyes on him, said, I was blinded by ghost, that is why I followed you. Tien Bolis did not get mad, but looking at his wife, his eyes were filled with laughter. Then, he reached out and held Saran's soft, boneless-like hand. Saran glared at him, whispered, how old are you now, still doing such disgusting thing? When Xiaofan came, what will it be like if he see it? Tien Bolis laughed but did not speak. Saran lowered her head, but did not took her hand back. The color of the night was soft as water, there was no one around. The cool wind passed back, shaking the branches in the night. It was very quiet inside the forest. After a moment, Saran suddenly said, actually, I think that Sha Danan is pretty similar to you back then. Then she raised her head, said to Tien Bolis, do you feel it? Tien Bolis startled, said, how can it be? Saran smiled, what is this face? Back then you were dumb looking, everyone think you can't be compared to your ambitious Shishongs. But in the end in Bamboo Peak, the highest achievement, highest cultivation turns out to be you. Then, your master passed you the head of Bamboo Peak. Tien Bolis snorted, said, this is called restrained talent, not dumb. Saran laughed, shook her head, said, you. Age got older, skin also got thicker, really can't deal with you. Paused, then she said, but about Xiaofan, I don't believe you can't see it. The performance of him during the past years is not as intelligent as Bei and Anan, but he is not dumb. I think he is above average. However, it was you treated him coldly, caused him to be low self-esteem, and making him seem like dull and coward. Then, she thought of something, pondered for a moment, finally said, but what I can't understand is that, the most basic level 1 pure essence incantation, how come he used 3 times more time than a normal person? Tien Bolis shook his head, let out the breath from his chest, said lightly, don't think too much now, when 7th comes, I will ask him, what did he do? What did he do that we don't know? Saran glanced at him, said, you make a furious face when he is here, otherwise before he can speak, he is already scared by your look. Tien Bolis snorted. Don't know why, a gust of anger will come out from my heart when I see him. Saran smiled. You actually want your disciple with the most future to be better, not only in cultivation, but also in dealing daily affair, you want him to be like Kevern, Anu, successful at both ways, in future, then she sighed and stopped. Tien Bolis remained quiet for a moment, then said, what is it? Saran looked at him, hesitated, then finally said, Buyi, your temper, over so many years, you haven't become like Vanti Shishong, so. Tien Bolis pondered for a moment, slowly nodded, I understand what you mean, no need to say it. Saran looked at him for a while, then laughed, If Xiaofan know his master who always despise him has high expectation on him, I wonder how happy he will be like. Tian Bolis snorted, face filled with disdain, turned away, said, with his dumb looking, I can have high expectation on him. Don't dream about it. Saran stood behind him, smiled at him. She could still feel the palm that is holding her hand, warm and large, it was like it haven't changed over the past 300 years. Quietly, she also held his hand tightly. Sha Danan and Xavion left the place where Onera and his master Herald of Vigor lived. As they were returning, he could still hear Onera's thick laughter resounding against his ears. The night became deeper, except for the night guard disciples, everyone slowly returned to their sleeping place. When they were about to arrive at the cave where Bamboo Peak lived, Xavion had a little worry in his heart, turned to Sha Danan, said, Xiaofan, do you remember what I told you? Sha Danan said, yes, Da Shishang. Xavion nodded. I don't know why Master is looking for you, but his eyebrows have been frowning since he came back visiting Anu, I am afraid it is something unpleasant. Sha Danan remained quiet, his heart was unrested, perhaps Anu told his master about Master Vim and Bilu. If it was really like that, he did not know how to answer his master if asked. Xavion saw Sha Danan wasn't speaking, he thought he was scared, so he patted his shoulder, said, Xiaofan, don't need to worry. Although Master is always strict, he truly loves us. Then he paused, lowered his voice, but don't get impetus, if you go against Master, we can't plead you. Sha Danan's heart was warmed. He gritted his teeth, looked at Xavion, and said quietly, Xavion, I am really sorry about how I treated at the past few days, forgive me. Xavion laughed, then patted his head, said, what are you saying this for? Hurry, don't let Master wait for too long. Today really is weird, the bright moon was hanging in the sky a moment ago, now the clouds have came. East Sea is different than our central plain after all. Sha Danan lifted his head and looked at the sky and saw it was darkened. The bright moon that was there a moment ago now covered by black clouds, weakened its brightness significantly, annoying to people. While they were talking, they had returned to the cave. Xavion and Sha Danan stopped their pace. They could hear the laughter that came out from Hidi and Amandla. Sha Danan was silent for a moment, then said to Xavion, Da Shishang, I will not go in then, and shall directly go into the forest to find Master. Xavion took a glance at him, nodded, that's fine, hurry. But now the forest is dark, you need to be careful while walking in the forest, understand? Sha Danan showed a smile, nodded, then headed into the forest. Xavion looked at his figure, suddenly felt the Xiao Shidi appeared to be a bit lonely. He sighed, shook his head, then went into the cave. Once he stepped into the forest, darkness surrounded him aggressively. Sha Danan paused for a moment, his heart was moved. After a moment, his eyes adapted the surrounding of the woods. The remnants of moonlight shined past the thick leaf, landed on the ground, leaving a bit of light. Everything in the forest was quiet. No bird cries of the morning, no breathing of the beast, even the song of insects was also disappeared into night. Only the enormous tree that stood everywhere like a warrior in the darkness. There were only the whistle of the wind. The wind came from the faraway sea, blew past the trees, creating rustle sound. In this ghostly forest, a young man walked alone. Sha Danan's mind floated away in this ghostly forest, dead silent night. He suddenly recalled many things of the past. At dusk, when he was still a child, he cuddled in his mother's arms, facing the night color, there was a faint fear in his large eyes. But then, without feeling it happened, the time that had passed was already this far away. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, shook his head, then quickened his pace and continued forward. However, he did not notice on the path where he was walking, a pair of bright, red eyes rose quietly from the darkness, burning with the flame of hatred. Like a pair of angry eyes from a person. Tian Bolis frowned, a bit impatient, said, what is wrong with him, still not here after long time? Saran glanced at him, said, how can he be that fast? Darren ran to find him, then he need to return from Herald of Valor. Even with running, it will take some time. You can't make him to fly around just for a tiny matter. Tian Bolis snorted, raised his head and looked at the sky, said, strange, why the sky changes so fast at East Sea. Saran looked around, also frowned, yeah. It was just shiny a moment ago. Now it got covered by dark clouds. But she didn't keep this in her mind, and asked something else. Buyi, there is still a thing that I don't understand since the beginning. Tian Bolis looked at her, said, what? Saran said. If Xiaofan really knows Master Vim and his daughter like Anu have said, no matter what reason, he should tell Vasp Kalo Shishang. He knows this clearly, but he spoke to you privately and concealed it from Vasp Kalo Shishang, and he was not very close to our bamboo peak. I feel this is not right. Tien Bolis was quiet for a moment, then said lightly, this person's mind is not simple. Saran's eyebrows frowned a little, said, how? Tien Bolis did not answer right away, instead he pondered for a moment, said, from what I know, Head Shishang have been focusing on cultivation for the past years and began to ignore faction matter. Most daily matter was taken care by Vasp Kalo and several elders. Then he paused, laughed coldly. Now people are discussing privately that Vasp Kalo is already the headmaster who live at Dragon Head Peak. Saran was shocked, with a little worry. She pulled Tien Bolis' sleeve, whispered, you must not say this outside. Tien Bolis nodded. I know, rest assured. Then he pondered for a moment, continued, you know this too, we Jadon for 2000 years, especially since Master Jade Leaf established Jadon's 7 houses, the position of headmaster was always succeeded by the Peak of Widow's disciple. But now, Saran smiled, continued for him, but now, Vasp Kalo Shishang was respected in the Facton, and also strong in cultivation, reputation is only second to Dial Shen Shishang. A new succeed as headmaster seems unarguable, but now it becomes questionable. Tien Bolis said lightly, and for 200 years, Vasp Kalo is always in charge of Jadon punishment enforcement, will not take anything other than his own will. Except for Doyle Shen Shishang, he already looking down at everyone. Xiao Shiji's worry is normal. Saran lowered her head, then said after a while, Buyi, this battle for the headmaster will affect quite wide, don't get too into it. Tien Bolis shook his head. How can I not know, but I am a head of a house, how can I avoid it? Today Anu gave me a gratitude, mostly as hoping I can give him support at future conflict. We can only take a step, watch a step. Saran sighed, nodded, we can only do that. Woo, a chill wind blew past from the deep of the forest. Sha Danan could feel the chill on his neck, lifted his head and saw the sky was full of figures of the trees, dancing like devils. He frowned, the forest was much ghostly tonight, very different than before. And then he thought, he haven't seen anything unlucky for the past days in here, so they will appear if the sky get a bit dark. Thinking of that, he laughed in his heart, then continued. Suddenly, crying of the ghost bursted behind him. Sha Danan was surprised, immediately turned around, then his face got pale even more. In the darkness, a skull slowly glowed in dark red light, spinning in the air. In the crying of ghost, the red skull stopped, it was facing Sha Danan. Sha Danan could see the ghostly fire inside of its eye sockets. He couldn't help but shivered. A moment later, behind that ghostly object, 2 figures slowly rose up. With the red light of the skull, Sha Danan could see one of them was a tall and skinny old man, horrible, dry face, almost only skin and bones, not very different than the red skull. His pair of eyes glared at Sha Danan, burning in fury. Another person was in a very embarrassing situation, although he was quite big. He was hung in midair by the old man like a little chicken, face filled with helplessness. Sha Danan was surprised, let out a, huh. This person was very familiar, it was cynical Dialection who he met in Cave of Fangs at Kongsang Mountain, and also ran into several times at Billows Hill. His collar was held by the bony old man, crying. Quickly he noticed Sha Danan, then it was like he saw a savior, immediately pointed at Sha Danan, cried out, ah. It's him, it's him. Sha Danan was surprised, not knowing what cynical Dialection meant. The old man glared at him, issued a sharp, hoarse voice at cynical Dialectia, this is the brat from Jadon. Cynical nodded, said quickly, right, it's him, senior vampire. It's the bastard who killed your only heir, vampire Zhang Lao San. Chapter 67, Vampire Devil. The old man with a hideous face was an old devil of Falcon that had been hidden for many years, known as founder of vampire. The righteous, and many Falcon also, called him Vampire Devil, and the main reason was the evil art he practiced. Art of vampire, required draining human blood into the body to assist cultivation, very awkward and horrifying. Although this hideous art is powerful, it has backfire effect on the cultivator. Anyone who practice the art of vampire will result in a terrifying face, unacceptable to the world. Even in the Falcon, there were many people not happy about it. But this art cannot to be taken lightly. 100 years ago when he made his first appearance, he had caused a reign of terror, giving the righteous a large headache. Later, when the falcon lost the upper hand, the righteous began adding pressure. And to avoid the hunting from the powerful righteous, the vampire devil also left the central plane with the falcon, so therefore there was no more news of him. This time the falcon was restored again. Vampire devil, who was originally part of the major 4 falcon sects, Venom, was also invited. Before he parted, his only disciple Zhang Lao San went to assist cynical dialection and Lu Gao. To his surprise, his disciple was killed in Cave of Fangs. Vampire devil was extremely furious after learning his disciple's death. Because the art of vampire has a very bad reputation, and the process of cultivating is dangerous, one mistake may cause backfire by the art and bursts the blood vessel. So even among the falcon, there is rarely anyone who is willing to practice the art. Zhang Lao San was a disciple he found years ago, and his attribute matched the master's strange temper. Because of that, Vampire Devil really likes him. And now his disciple died without figured out the reason. How can he not be furious? Recently, there was a big movement within the falcon. With the Vim cut out an opening path into this desolated land below hill of the East Sea, other 3 major sects also sent out reinforcement. Vampire Devil was among them. He arrived the Billows Hill just today. Coincidentally, he ran into cynical dialection as well as other bloodfurger. Nian Boss, Lu Gao, and many others were all cunning. Seeing Vampire Devil's face was clouded, and based upon their knowledge of this old man's strange, ruthless temper, they realized he must be still burned with hatred for his disciple's death. Every one of them slipped away immediately. As for cynical dialection, describable in a nicer way it would be striot forward, more negative way would be slow react. He stepped forth and greeted Vampire Devil, saying, "Ah, Senior, haven't met for many years, is your body still well?" Without needing it to be finished, Vampire Devil already felt this cynical really death, mocking for not dying after caused my disciple's death. Under the anger, he grabbed cynical dialection up in the air. Finally cynical dialection realized something was not right and began begging for mercy. The Vampire Devil was also not speaking any rubbish to him. "Now we will head to the Jadon and search for the bastard who killed my disciple. If we find him, lucky for you. If not, I will first drink your blood to dry as a sacrifice for my disciple." Cynical dialection's face turned dead pale immediately, but no one could hear his complaint. Sha Danan met cynical dialection several times since he arrived at Billows Hill. But cynical dialection was always fighting someone or escaping in the sky. He never noticed Sha Danan. Even the time when they were in the cave, Sha Danan was hiding in the dark corner. And when he came out, cynical dialection already rushed out among other people, busying with the righteous disciple. Cynical dialection thought in his mind, who knows if that bastard had came to Billows Hill. If he did not come, himself will be dead innocently under the rage of the Vampire Devil. He kept begging for mercy, but Vampire Devil's heart was hard as stone, ignored him and secretly flew to the righteous, living place. Then at this moment in the dark woods, he suddenly saw Sha Danan's figure. Cynical dialection was very glad, much more happier than if he see his mom and dad. He immediately cried out, "That's him, can't be wrong, I can still recognize him even if he turns into ashes." Vampire Devil snorted, then tossed cynical dialection away like some kind of trash. Sha Danan heard a muffled bang, followed by a painful cry. Did he landed on the ground, or hit on a tree? Vampire Devil examined Sha Danan carefully with his eyes, did not make a move right after, but frowned. Although he was aggressive, he was not out of his mind. That day when he saw Zhang Lao San's corpse that was carried by the bloodfurger, aside from anger and sadness, he also discovered something strange. The way of Zhang Lao San's flesh-dried death was so similar to his art of vampire. Are there people practice this art, other than Zhang Lao San and himself? Of course he didn't know that in Sha Danan's hand, on the fire stick, it was the sinister orb, descended from Falcon's elder Blackheart. But with his several hundreds of cultivation experience, he was determined that the murderer, even if he was not using the art of vampire, he was using a similar magic that is similar to art of vampire. Additionally, that person cultivation power was no less than him. Now he was facing Sha Danan, examining him carefully first, trying to seek an odd thing about him. But he looked at every places of him, he frowned, but still couldn't make out anything. From head to feet, then from feet to head, this brat is still a common Jadon disciple, without any unique place, not to mention he did not has any bloodthirsty energy of the art of vampire. Sha Danan stood there, felt a creep for being watched by a ghostly old man. He did not know who he is, but seeing he was with cynical dialect, must be a falcon. And based on their conversation, it seemed they came for him. The red glowing skull began spinning slowly again. Vampire Devil's voice came out coldly behind the red light. Jadon's brat, is it you who killed my disciple Zhang Lao-san? Sha Danan, startled, asked, who is Zhang Lao-san? Vampire Devil speechless and was furious. If it was usually, he would already send a magic and drain his dry first. But thinking of this Jadon disciple can possibly having a certainly level of art of vampire cultivation, he must figures this out. He forced to suppress down his anger, but his voice was already like ghost howling, the one you killed with art of vampire in Kongsang Mountain's Cave of Fang. Sha Danan was shocked. Hearing the word vampire again, he recalled the terrifying scene that floated in his mind. His heart tightened, his hand subconsciously reached to his fire stick. The fire stick peacefully lying at his waist, like a sleeping demon. Vampire Devil saw he was quiet, which was very disrespectful to him at the extreme, 10 times more arrogant than righteous who hunted him. His temper was always aggressive. If not because he had question in his mind, how could he hold it for this long? This anger triggered him. He roared, Jadon's brat, return my disciple to me. Sha Danan was surprised and took a step back. Ghost cried and Chill Wind screamed, he could even feel the creep on the back of his neck. The hair of his entire body raised. The red skull suddenly opened its jaw in midair. Instantly, 5 beams of black lights came out and landed before Sha Danan. After a moment later, they slowly rose up. Sha Danan gathered himself and prepared. Although knowing the Falcon heretic before him was awkward and evil, he still shivered when he saw what was before him. The 5 figures that were rising up were 5 monsters with unique shape, but terrifying nevertheless. The large jaws, sharp fangs, and the stink, dirty breath against his nose. Just a short period of time, the 5 monsters already grew to giants that were 1.5 taller than Sha Danan himself. Behind them, Vampire Devil's hands held into a strange mark, often tap, hit and shake the red skull. The monsters answered, they were controlled by this old devil. At this moment, it was like because of the red light that let out from the skull, even Vampire Devil's eyes seemed a little red. He gave a cold laughter, then 10 fingers tightened on the red skull. As if it reacted to his action, the 5 gigantic monsters' eyes brightened in red, letting out a vicious glance. At the same time they all howled to the sky. Woo! Sha Danan's body was shocked, his mind was almost captured by it. The figures shined around him, the ghostly cry pierced through his ears, stabbed straight into his brain, causing unbearable pain. The 5 monsters howled, then pounced on him. Among the screaming of the fierce wind, Sha Danan used all his strength to dodge it with a slight gap. But before he can calm himself, the 5 monsters inserted their claws into the ground among the howling. Sha Danan was in midair. With the fire stick held in his hand, his heart is more rested. It was like the fire stick also felt something, it beginning to get brightened with green light. Without giving him a moment to think, the claws that were inserted into the earth by the 5 monsters pulled the entire piece of earth out. But more terrifying was under the ground, countless of nether spirits in all size came out, flying toward to Sha Danan, completely surrounded him in a blink of an eye. Vampire Devil smiled coldly, but then frowned. Because he was aware that this young man may beard with special ability, so he did not use his most capable skill art of vampire, instead he used a magic he cultivated during recent year, spirit control. Using his own soul to cultivate into 5 life ghosts, which are used as pulling force to capture all the wraiths within 10 miles. After then, crafted them with magic and turned to fierce, bloodthirsty nether spirits, and ordered them to attack Sha Danan. This Jadon disciple's cultivation was not low, he showed no sign of practiced art of vampire. Did he just missed it? Or was it because Cynical was trying to stay alive and found a random scapegoat for him? As Vampire Devil was thinking, he suddenly felt something and his body shook. He lifted his head and found at the place where countless of white nether spirits were surrounding Sha Danan so tightly that he could not be seen, among the heavy white light, there was a beam of green light, shine through countless of nether spirit. A tearing noise, clear and loud. The night of the Billow Hill got darker. Even the weakest moonlight can no longer be seen. In this silent and lonely color of the night, there was a long whistle. The tide at the faraway sea got more aggressive. There was a icy coldness passed through the heart. The fire stick suddenly glared. The originally black stick was like an awakened demon, opened its eyes. Instantly, a cold and vicious sense came out from Sha Danan. The countless nether spirits were terrified, flew around in panic. Vampire Devil's eyebrows frowned tightly, his face got solemn, and mumbled quietly to himself, very heavy vicious energy. The 5 enormous life ghosts held together. Their figures flashed and lifted into the air, landed around Sha Danan, surrounding him in the center. At the same time, their claws teared across the air, causing sharp sound. The nether spirits that were in panic because of the mistress vicious energy that came off from the fire stick, were suddenly froze in midair. Sha Danan could see many of the painful look of those shape-shifted face had returned to fierce looking. Ah! The screaming of the ghost pierced through the air. Countless of nether spirits pounced toward at the only flesh body. Sha Danan took in a cold breath. Around him it was nothing but the ghostly white figures, rushing toward him, giving him no break. Few seconds later, the ghosts pressed him down to the ground like a thick cloud. Sha Danan gritted his teeth, trying to hold out, but soon later he staggered, a sharp pain pierced into his legs, almost caused him to fall. Sha Danan was surprised, looked down and saw a pair of hands had reached out from the earth underneath, grabbed his legs tightly. The sharp claws almost sticked into his vein. Surrounding him, the 5 life ghosts that were there have only 4 of them remain. The nether spirits cheered in the sky, swarming around him. The greedy jaws were before his eyes. Sha Danan was pale, even his muscles were a bit twisted. Bearing the pain, his right hand formed an incantation mark and sliced across the air before him. The fire stick rose and drew a wall of mystic green light, one after another. The first several nether spirits could not halt quick enough and crushed on the black stick, then evaporate into smoke without a scream. At the same time, Sha Danan's body shocked again. He took a peer and the claws had pierced through his skin like a sharp knife. Fresh blood bled, fell on black claws. The fresh, sweet smell of blood spread out immediately in the air. Sha Danan startled. The nether spirits in the crowded air were also startled. The light on the fire stick shook softly. It was like excited by the smell of its own blood. A moment later, countless of nether spirits charged downward at the sweet body of Fresh. Even with the cruel wind screaming, that person roared proudly. The fire stick dropped and caught by Sha Danan, without carrying the nether spirits above him. His eyes glared, with a bit of red light flashing. A stab, stabbed downward, passed through the claws, also passed through his own blood. The red blood quietly sinked into the black stick. The red vein on the stick suddenly brightened. Poof! There was a muffled noise came from the deep ground. The nether spirits from the above were all paused, terrified. It was like the legendary demon who forged spirits was before them. In the darkness, only the fire stick was shining. At far, the red skull that was in Vampire Devil's hand suddenly made a quiet rattle. Then, on the right-hand side, a piece fell off. Vampire Devil's color changed greatly, he lifted his head with surprise on his face. That boy has defeated one of his life ghosts from his spirit controls array. On the scene, the 4 life ghosts clearly were not enough to control so many spirits without one of their companions, some nether spirits began to flee. The earth around Sha Danan suddenly sank half a foot deep. The claws that grabbed his legs slowly released, melt into blood and absorbed by the earth. But before giving him a moment to relieve, he heard the nether spirits were screaming in the sky. He was surprised and about to resist. However, the nether spirits were fleeing instead. The white lights dazzled, the ghost cry screamed, the nether spirits fluttered, a red light flashed. Red light, passing through countless of white nether spirits, a red light shot toward him as fast as lightning, the sparkling skull was already arrived before him in a blink of an eye. Sha Danan was about to make a jump, but it pulled the wound on his legs. His body staggered and was unable to dodge. The red skull opened its jaw, baited toward him like an evil spirit. In fright, Sha Danan summoned his fire stick to block in front of him. But at that instant, a withered hand reached out from the jaw, soon became 3 feet long. The 5 fingers formed into claws, grabbed heavily on his chest. Sha Danan's body was greatly shocked. The withered skin of that ghostly hand suddenly full with blood, while himself was dizzy in his head, felt that all the blood in his body were surging toward the injury on his chest. It was of course Vampire Devil's speciality art of vampire. See Sha Danan is in his control, he couldn't help but laughed, shouted, and lifted Sha Danan's body into midair. Brat, give me my disciple's life. Sha Danan was grabbed by him, the blood of his body were going inverse, very painful. His consciousness was fading, and he could only use the last bit of his strength to resist, hit that ghostly hand with the fire stick, but it was powerless like a feather. The Vampire Devil ignored it. He snorted and thought, this young man is nothing, his cultivation is also average, but the Esper is very weird. After finished draining his blood, the fire stick should be taken back and have a good look at it. At this moment, the fire stick landed on the hand that was grabbing Sha Danan's chest. The mystic green orb sliced past the skin that was drinking the blood savagely. Was the blood beneath the skin summoning something? The vampire devil suddenly screamed, let go of Sha Danan and leaped backward, looked at his arm. The healthy skin due to blood-sucking withered almost at that same instant, worse than it was before. And in front of him, Sha Danan was tottering, but the fire stick in hand, especially the orb on the top, was glowing strangely, shining on the blood vein, sparkling in red. Vampire devil made a cold laugh. I was wondering about how Zhang Lao San died, so the secret is here. Heh, there can be such treasure in this world. Brat, hand it over to me along with your life. After that he rose into the air, hand formed into claws, this time he aimed right at Sha Danan's head. Pitiful that Sha Danan was strengthless all over his body, with no power to resist, about to see himself dead under Vampire Devil's hand. Evildoer! A shout that filled with anger. A blazing wave of heat pierced through the air, like a tremendous wave, engulfed the entire forest. All trees within 10 yards had withered. A brilliant light of fire came down from the sky, teared the dark clouds into pieces. Vampire Devil was terrified. The person that was arriving had an innermally high cultivation. Where can he find the focus to harm Sha Danan? His hands retrieved swiftly. Among the screaming, the red skull shined brightly, raised a blood-red wall of light before him. Boom! Like the sound of thunder hitting the ground, the firelight landed on the blood wall. The crushing heat wave turned into a shaking, red celestial sword. The enormous power pushed Sha Danan several yards backward. The strength did not weaken, still pressing on him like mountain and sea. Vampire Devil's face paled, shouted, and changed the incantation mark of his 10 fingers. A pair of bloody beams shot out from the eye sockets of the red skull, passed through the blood wall and hit on the red sword. In the bang, the red sword flew backward while Vampire Devil, shocked, steadied himself after backing up several steps. Flame Spirit! Creepy chill rose in Vampire Devil's eyes, his face was cold as frost. The blazing heat flashed then vanished, Tien Bolis appeared from where the fire was. A figure flashed behind him, it was Saran, holding Sha Danan who was about to fall. Sha Danan's heart was warmed as he saw his master and Shi Niang arrived. Saran was worried, whispered to him, Xiao Fan, are you all right? Sha Danan forced a smile. I am fine, Shi Niang. His word was only half finished, suddenly golden stars flashed before his eyes, then it was darkness. He fainted. Saran's brows frowned tightly. Tien Bolis ignored Vampire Devil to check Sha Danan first. After a while, Saran finished checking. She reached into her sleeve and took out a bottle, poured out a yellow pill and let Sha Danan took it. After that she nodded at Tien Bolis, said quietly, he won't die. Paused, looked at Vampire Devil from far away, eyes filled with resentment. It was the art of vampire. Anger flashed on Tien Bolis' face, turned around and met his eyes with Vampire Devil's. Vampire Devil, you are already a several hundreds years old figure, and you used such cruel method on a junior, what are you? Posh, Vampire Devil said aggressively. So your disciple's life is a life, my disciple's life is not a life. Tien Bolis said coldly, what does that has to do with your stupid disciple? Vampire Devil's eyes froze, said, he killed my disciple in Kongsang Mountain's Cave of Fangs, so I am here to kill him, how about this then? Nice. Tien Bolis suddenly shouted, nice killing. Vampire Devil startled. Tien Bolis coldly laughed. I used to despise this disciple, but today he appeared to be better than I had imagined, for he know how to rid of harm for the sake of the people. The anger was not minor for Vampire Devil, he said furiously. Good, you born, 100 years ago you hunted me when I was in difficult situation. Today, allow me to taste the blade of your flame spirit again. Tien Bolis took a deep breath, right hand sliced across the air. As if the flame spirit answering to its master's will, it, too, shaking in excitement. 100 years ago I allowed you to barely escape with a bit of luck, today let me see how well you have trained your art of vampire that bold enough to harm my disciple. Chapter 68, Flame Spirit. Vampire Devil snorted, but he showed no fear, a fierce look appeared on his face. Back then it was because you righteous dominated with large numbers, do I really fear of you? After that, his hands shook. The red glowing skull pieced through the air, circling him rapidly. His eyes were becoming red. Tien Bolis took a deep breath, prepared carefully. 100 years ago, he was already a talented person in Jadon. When he was hunting down the remainers of the Falcons, he was the part of the main force, and did fought with Vampire Devil. He knew this person cannot be taken lightly, and the art of vampire was no small matter. At this moment, the dark clouds gathered together again. The scar that caused by Tien Bully's heaven-shaking strike disappeared. The color of the night darkened again. Faintly, there was sound of wave from the ocean mixed with screaming of the wind, and becoming more aggressive. As if it was hiding in the depth of the sea, a long cry softly drifting in the color of the night, under the sky. Sha Danan slowly regained his consciousness. He felt an uncomfortable feeling on his chest. Suddenly he heard a "huh" from someone, then a white hand reached out and softly massaged his chest. After a moment, the energy that was trapped in his chest cleared out smoothly. He felt much better. Sha Danan raised his head and saw his Xiniang Saran, who was holding him, smiling quietly. Sha Danan blushed, mumbled, "Thank you, Xiniang." Saran said gently, "Are you all right?" Sha Danan nodded. "Right now, it is the tiredness, nothing else." Saran nodded with a smile, then suddenly chuckled. "That's good, now watch your master fight for you." Sha Danan was surprised, then followed Saran's eyes, he was stunned. Under the dark sky, among the overcasted black clouds, a blazing, brilliant ball of light brightened half of the sky. It was like embed a frame on the edge of the dark clouds. Tien Bully's was like ancient god of fire, standing on the clouds, turning the flame of his flame spirit into a fire dragon, tearing the dark clouds, charged into the sky. As for the vampire devil, there was no sign of him. However, next to the clouds on the sky, there was an enormous skull, screaming wildly. The wind and clouds changed, the ghostly blood light rose into the sky, fought with the fire dragon. The sky full of dark clouds were boiling, roaring. Watching from the ground, the two people were like deities of 9 skies, fighting each other angrily. Sha Danan's heart was moved, completely admiring his master. The roar of the dragon shocked the earth. It swam in the clouds with heaven-shaking might, quite similar to the time when he was in Dark Drake Cave. Three Tails Fox Spirit used Inferno Mirror to summon the fire dragon, but this time it was much more powerful. Reminded of that, his body suddenly shook. A wave of heat rose from the Inferno Mirror on his right arm like it was excited by something. The heat spread across his entire body. Saran felt it, turned to him, asked concernedly, "Xiaofan, your body suddenly becomes this hot, are you having fever after the injury?" Sha Danan was surprised, did not expect his Xiniang is so sensitive. He did not know how to reply, only murmuring, nothing." Saran frowned, and was about to ask, she sensed something and turned around. Sound of footsteps issued from the forest. After a moment, no less than 100 people came out. Skysong's Fashion, Incense Valley's Li Su, Yanan were also among them. The one who was walking in the front is Master Vasp Kalo. Saran rose up, smiled, "Vasp Kalo Shishong, you are here." Vasp Kalo nodded, said lightly, "Tien Shidi is showing off here, shocking the heaven. We are not blind nor deaf, so we come and have a look." Saran frowned, felt the sarcasm in his words. Before she said anything, the Bamboo Peak disciples already saw Sha Danan, sitting on the ground languishingly with blood all of him. Hidi screamed and ran forth. Xavion, Amandla, and Hidaji were also worried and followed behind her. But quickly after, a white figure flashed, rushed forward even faster than them. It was Bei. Bei dashed to Sha Danan's side, crouched down, grabbed his shoulders, with his face a bit paled, asked, "Xiaofan, are you all right?" Sha Danan could feel the worry in his eyes, his heart was warmed. He nodded and smiled, "I am fine, nothing wrong." Bei took a look at him, then glanced on the wound on his chest, finally relieved and let out a long breath, said, "Who hurted you?" Sha Danan pointed up, said, "That devil, I heard my master called him, something like, vampire devil." Bei's body was shocked, it appeared he knew that devil. He surprised, that old guy also reappeared. At this moment Hidi and others arrived next to Sha Danan, intrigating him with questions. Sha Danan felt Heidi's concerning eyes, instead he lowered his head, answering his Shishong's questions quietly, saying he is already recovered. As the battle in the sky was getting exciting, Bei stood next to Sha Danan, watched the above for a moment, then suddenly said, "Xiaofan, your master does not seem to be anything during normal days, can't imagine his cultivation is this high." Anger rose within Hidi upon hearing this. Since the time she lost to Bei right at her home's doorstep, she never liked this kid. She snorted, said, how can a kid from Dragon Head Peak like you able to see the deep level of my dad's cultivation? Bei frowned and turned around. But Heidi's eyes were glaring at him, not stepping back. It startled him. After that he suddenly smiled. Tian Shimei, you were right. Hidi was stunned, for she did not expect the arrogance young boy's attitude become this niece. Althaug Bei was smiling, he was looking at a different direction. She followed Bei's eyes and found he was smiling at Kevin, who was standing next to Master Vasp Kalo. With Heidi's quick wit, she immediately knew Bei felt improper to argue with her in front of his respected Kevin. Although her heart was not embarrassed, it was still sweeted when her eyes met with Kevin's. Saran frowned. She heard what those youngster said. The speakers were careless, but the listener was paying attention. After a while, she turned her glance on Master Vasp Kalo. Master Vasp Kalo was raising his head, watching Tien Bolis emotionlessly, but his eyes were shining. What was it that thinking in his mind? At this moment, in the howling of the fierce wind, the flame shot in all direction, the blood light pierced into the sky. At the decisive moment of the battle, Master Vasp Kalo suddenly said coldly, did not expect Vampire Devil would be so reckless to provoke here. Kevin was next to him. He stepped forth, said, Master, what is the command? Master Vasp Kalo took a glance at the sky, said, your Tien Shibo's victory is already certain, that old devil won't be able to last long. You bring other men to lay up a trap, we can't let this devil to escape again this time. Kevin answered, then waved his hand, called Bei back. Then, he turned to gather other major faction disciples such as Fazan and Li Su, discussed their plan. Saran walked next to Master Vasp Kalo slowly, smiled, Vasp Kalo Shishong, how can you see Buyi is about to win? Master Vasp Kalo looked at Saran, a smile appeared on his emotionless face, said, Su Shimei, are you making fun of me, who is a useless Shishong? Saran shook her head, smiled, give me 10 guts and I still will not dare to make fun of you. I am sincerity asking for knowledge here. Master Vasp Kalo smiled, said, Su Shimei, you are always wise, a far better potential than me, a useless Shishong, why be so modest? Although Vampire Devil's cultivation is not low, additionally having Blood Skull, with him, the blood light seems sky-breaking, matchlessly aggressive, I can see that even the momentum is fierce, the blood red light on the Esper, 3 inches to the right, was unstable. The red skull seemed to be damaged at there. In normal situation it doesn't mean anything, with this devil's cultivation, just need to bring it back and repair it, then everything will be fine. But now in front of Tien Shidi, it is his greatest flaw. Then, he paused, an icy coldness flashed in his eyes, but his voice remained calm, said, Tien Shidi on the other hand, steadily using Jadon incantation to drive Flame Spirit Sword, conjured the true dragon of red fire. Although the blood skull's red light shined brightly, it shrinks back every time it contracted with true dragon of red fire. And Tien Shidi was determined to attack the blood skull's 3 inches to the right with every single one of his strike. Vampire Devil may seemed bold, but was already stranded, lose for certain. From Su Shimei's perspective, am I wrong? Saran smiled. Shishong is wise. I only know it after you said it. Master Vasp Kalo smiled lightly, turned around and gazed at the sky, suddenly lowered his voice, but in a calm tone, said slowly, Su Shimei. Saran said, what, Vasp Kalo Shishong? Master Vasp Kalo's eyes were still on the 2 people that were fighting in the sky, his voice was clear, said, since Tien Shidi broke through into pure essences, Shangqing realm, 100 years ago, his cultivation must be advancing rapidly over the past several years. Saran was shocked, but her face did not show, she smiled, Vasp Kalo Shishong you are overpraising. Buyi is nowhere as talented as Headmaster Shishong and you. Master Vasp Kalo slowly shook his head, showed a smile on the corner of his lips, said, 100 years ago we righteous crushed the falcon, I, and Tien Shidi, Peak of Winds Sang Shidi, Sunrise Peaks Shang Shidi, and the main houses Vanti. Saran suddenly called quietly, Vasp Kalo Shishong. Master Vasp Kalo was shocked, appeared to have remembered something. He nodded, then continued. We hunted those falcon devil deep into the wildlands. At that time, Tien Shidi already broke through into Shangqing realm. Vanti Shi, that man told us, Tien Shidi seemed dull, but intelligent in the inside, especially his unwavering attitude, a very rare quality. In path of cultivation, he will have an immeasurable future. Then, he smiled, said, Su Shimei, that man, you know him. What he said, what he thought, you probably won't have question about it. Saran smiled lightly, did not say anything, only turned around, looked at the sky. Vampire Devil stood in midair, very vicious appearance, but his heart was getting more and more scared. 100 years ago, he fought against Tien bullies already. At that time, that man's cultivation was not low, but with his art of vampire, he was certain of victory. 100 years after, when they fought again, that man's cultivation advanced unexpectedly fast. The fire dragon from Flame Spirit Sword always crushed on the nether blood light that was supported by his art of vampire. Not only the dragon was not in the lower hand, it was getting more and more suppressing. The most head-hurting things was not only that. When he was fighting Sha Danan, he was careless because he saw he was only a young Jadon, and got one of his life ghost from the spirit control array destroyed. Couldn't blame Vampire Devil for not really understanding not happened. His blood skull was artifact of ghost. If it meets any legendary divine weapons, like Anon's, Aeolian Firmus, of course there will be some counteracting. With his experience, he would be careful. But Sha Danan's fire stick Esper was just too awkward. It had no sign of energy of a divine weapon. Because the vicious energy was too strong, it was more like an evil Esper like Vampire Devil's, so he didn't put that into his heart. The fire stick in Sha Danan's hand, the sinister orb can only absorb blood from living thing, helpless when against the ghosts. Another half, however, was the Dead Wand, a legendary evil artifact that refined with nether spirits over thousands years, the oldest of all artifacts of ghost. During the fight it was excited by Sha Danan's blood. When it inserted into the body of the life ghost, it instantly cleansed the life ghost into nothingness, much more simpler than any divined weapons. If it was usually, Vampire Devil would only be a little bit surprised, since Sha Danan's cultivation was far worse than him after all. When Vampire Devil used this most powerful skill, Sha Danan fell quickly. But now facing Tien bullies whose cultivation was not lower than him, instead slightly stronger, this small hidden weakness was showed. Spirit's control and art of vampire were both relied upon Blood Skull. One of the life ghosts was destroyed, the Blood Skull also received a minor damage. At this moment however, it became Vampire Devil's greatest danger. Tien bullies held the position of the head of Bamboo Peak for nearly 100 years, not only cultivation was far superior than Sha Danan, knowledge and experience were also better than him 100 times. After a few rounds, he noticed a spot on the Blood Skull was unstable, therefore he used all his strength to attack there. At the beginning, it was nothing. But once time prolonged, Vampire Devil was very exhausted. The dragon roared in the sky, dancing with its claws. The large skull that conjured by Vampire Devil was getting dimmer. The blazing flame, on the other hand, almost dyed the entire sky into dark red. Vampire Devil regretted for being too arrogant. He thought with his hundreds years of hard cultivation, except for the several tops in righteous, none he should be feared. This time he came, he did ask secretly to ensure knowing that the several people he feared did not come, and his heart was rested. Unexpectedly, Tien bullies, cultivation have been advanced rapidly over 100 years. As he was worrying, he took a glance below unintentionally, then it was another surprise. On the ground, many figures were moving, at least dozens of them. Based on their clothing, they were most likely to be the righteous. There were several who he familiar with, especially Master Vasp Kalo in the front, he was one of the Jadon who hunted him. Vampire Devil's heart was really frozen, he immediately looked for a retreat. At the moment his mind was distracted, the fire dragon suddenly screamed, loud like thundered. Vampire Devil was surprised and lifted his head, what he saw terrified him. The fire dragon suddenly brightened with flame in midair, but for a while it did not attack, instead, it shrinked and returned to Tien bullies, hand like a whale sucking in water. It returned to Flame Spirit Sword. As for the fire light, it did not weaken, still shined the entire sky. Tien bullies' face was cold and solemn. Flame Spirit lay in front of his chest, left hand held the incantation, took 7 steps of the position of the 7 stars, then stabbed toward the sky with Flame Spirit Sword, mumbled, Rage of 9 skies turns to divine thunder. Might of heaven, arrive at this sword. On the ground, especially the Jadon, it was a wave of excitement. The Bamboo Peak disciples were all extremely excited. Even Master Vasp Kalo became a little pale. The lower dark clouds was like boiling water, the wind held between sky and earth. A moment later, noise of blasting thunder came from the deep of the dark clouds, then exploded near the 2 people. At that instant, the world was shaking. The entire Billows Hill was also shaking. Even the calm ocean water surrounded the island was now unbelievably boiling. An ancient lighting flashed in the sky, pierced through the dark clouds, teared up the sky. Like a proud, mighty deity entered the realm of mortal, landed on the tip of the burning sword. At that instant, the men in the sky could no longer be seen. That glaring and brilliant radiance covered this piece of sky and earth. Wind blew past, fluttered everyone's clothes. The world suddenly became a deadly quiet. Suddenly, thunder roared again. In the exploding bang, the world changed its color. An enormous pillar of light shot out, pierced through all black clouds, brighter than summer day sun, struck at Vampire Devil determinedly, unstoppably. A moment later, Vampire Devil was completely covered by the radiance. Even the red light of his blood skull had completely disappeared instantly. A figure was falling from the clouds. Tien Bolis held Flame Spirit tightly, breathing heavily, face was a bit paled, but he stood on the clouds like a god. After the shocking silence, an uproar bursted in the righteous crowd, many were filled with admiration. Every Bamboo Peak disciples were proud. Sha Danan was stunned, completely filled with admiration. He forced his eyes to leave Tien Bolis and saw everyone were smiling, Hidi was laughing. Other than happiness, Sha Danan thought of something and looked at the Bamboo Height disciples. Anon was standing there quietly, staring at Tien Bolis' figure, lost in thought. The same skill, Thunderblade, but in Tien Bolis' hand, the power was not just 10 times stronger than Anon. Vampire Devil's face was red as blood. His body fell without any control. Master Vasp Kalo snorted, then gave Kevern an eye signal. Kevern understood, waved his hand, then quickly 6 or 7 disciples came out from the righteous crowd with their espers out, and dashed toward to where Vampire Devil is about to land. Vampire Devil's body shook, waving his hands in midair, like trying to resist. But quickly, red light flashed on his face, then spewed out mouthful of blood. His face immediately turned ash gray. Everyone laughed, they knew Vampire Devil was powerless to offer resistance and about to see Kevern captures him alive. Suddenly Saran shouted, "Careful!" Kevern, Bay and others were surprised. Suddenly their eyes were confused, purple light and black gas flashed, several great force striked out from the darkness. The 2 people who flew in the front, a Jade disciple and a Skysong monk, were badly beaten with blood coming from their mouth, and fell backward. Kevern and others were surprised and forced their body to hold, but the great force was already arriving before them, falling on them overwhelmingly, like mountains and oceans. Kevern called loudly, "Retreat!" At the same time, he gritted his teeth, the frozen ice sword in his hand flashed over and over again, instantly formed 7 layers of ice wall, trying to create covers for his allies. But without giving them much time, the great force hit on the ice wall and broke through them like papers, rushed upon them. Kevern was standing right in front of it. At this moment he almost stopped breathing. A green light appeared, it was Bay, who saw Kevern in a dangerous situation, recklessly summoned Dragon Slayer and charged forth. Kevern shouted, "Lin Shidi, run!" But the speed of the overwhelming strength, it was already before them in a blink of an eye. The 2 people were like a small boat in a large storm, couldn't do anything but wait for death. Suddenly someone shouted from behind. "Devil!" Wind blew, the strange force met their opponents. Sound of fighting rang for a while. The sound of wind howled, then suddenly stopped. Kevern and Bay's collars were grabbed by someone, then thrown several yards backward, saved their life at least. The 2 putted themselves back together and saw the person who saved Kevern was Master Vasp Kalo, the person who pulled Bay back was Saran. And standing with them were from other factions, elders such as Herald of Vigor, also including Tien Bolis who came down from the clouds. At far, the pearl light and black gas caught Vampire Devil. Several people appeared, while countless of footsteps issued from the forest behind them. The darkness was filled heavily with shadows, could not see how many people were hiding in there. But based on those who appeared, they were most likely Falcon. Sha Danan was surprised and rose up, looked at the Falcon standing in the front. The one who caught Vampire Devil was Master Vim. There were 3 men next to him, a bald-head old man, a vicious-looking but tiny midge, the last one was a white-faced scholar, cool and different, with a smile hanging on his face, count not see a sign of evil. Among the righteous, Master Vasp Kalo exchanged a glance with Tien Bolis, the corner of his eye was twisting. He snorted, said coldly, "Good. Good, now you old men finally appear." Chapter 69, Qinglong, Edition 1 and 2. Note. Tien Buyi equals Xiao Fana's teacher Tien Bolis in Muya's translation. Suru equals Tianbaya's wife Saran. Tian Linger equals Tianbai's daughter, Hidi. Xiao Fan equals Tianbai's disciple, Sha Danan. Xiao Yikai equals head of Qingyun sect, Tong Tian Peak A's disciple. Li Xuan equals Fen Shang, the actual meaning of the Chinese words are burn incense, valley's disciple. Yan Hong equals Fen Shang Valley disciple. Qi Hao equals Long Shou Valley Taoist Kang Sangha's disciple, also Tian Lingera's lover Kevern. Fa Shan equals Tian Yin Temple's disciple. Fa Shang equals Tian Yin Temple's disciple. Pong, there was a loud sound and everyone was shocked and looked to the direction of the sound. It was Shi Tu's Shatterer staff that had flown up to the sky, and landed only now. There was a moment of silence. On the good fraction side, many were frowning, guarding with attention. This time round, the evil fraction revived with great strength contrary to expectations. Besides looking at this situation, there are still many and more profound power hidden and not shown. On the evil fraction side, each harbor evil intentions. Elder Duanmu is slightly better as he does not belong to any sect and is only siding with blood-sucking demon because he gets along only with him. But to Ghost King, Bai Duzi and blood-sucking demon are both Thousand Poison Clan's important people, and at this moment silently looking at each other, is already a severe warning to him. Only Ghost King and Qing Long are standing there looking calm. It seemed like Qing Long was saying something quietly to Ghost King. Ghost King smiled and shook his head, appearing not to mind but glanced at the direction of Xiao Fan. The night is deepening, with the sea breeze whistling. Far away in the vast boundless sea, the strange short periods of long and mournful cry in the late night appears to be nearing, slowly becoming distinct. Tian Buyi and Taoist Kang Song looked at each other, both sensed that each other had the intention to retreat. Suru, who was standing at the side, coughed slightly and spoke softly to Taoist Kang Song. Kang Song brother, the evil power is strong now, why don't we temporarily retreat and make plans again after discussion with head of sect, what do you think? Kang Song pondered a while before nodding his head decidedly. Junior sister is right, and glanced at Tian Buyi. Tian Buyi slowly nodded his head. Kang Song just about to speak when he seemed to have thought of something, looked to the left, frowned and spoke in a low voice, where is Xiao Yikai? Why didn't we see him at all? Qi Hao, who was standing beside him, heard and stepped up and said, Teacher, Xiao brother said he was not feeling well when we were coming out, so he did not follow. Taoist Kang Song's face darkened and snorted, but as he could not make thoughtless remarks in front of his disciple, he could only turn his face and was about to speak to the other branch disciples like Fai Shang, Li Xuan etc. when suddenly there was a miserable cry from behind the crowd. The crowd stirred and there was a moment of confusion, but they could only see that there were several young good fraction disciples severely injured and staggering in from the darkness, with blood on their body. They hissed loudly, there are evil faction people behind. In the darkness, from the ancient forest, there seemed to be numerous wailing cries. Tian Buyi etc. turned pale. Ever since Ghost King and his men appeared, everyone was focusing their attention on these old monsters. They did not expect that the evil fraction would secretly outflank their retreat route, preventing them from escaping. But at this moment, there were flashes of light in the forest, numerous magical weapons appeared, the good fraction, one after another took up their magical weapon to defend, but because they were unprepared and the number of evil fraction disciples were more than expected, they were at a disadvantage. Taoist Kang Sangha's complexion was somber, he shouted loudly and soared into the sky. However, without waiting to see his actions, Bai Duzi and Elder Duanmu threw themselves forward. Bai Duzi smiled and looked fiercely while crying out, dog Taoist, give me your life. Taoist Kang Song paused in midair as he did not dare to belittle these old monsters and had to turn around to receive their attacks. At the same time, there was a flash of red light below him. It was Tian Buyi, who had taken on Elder Duanmu's attack. Suru stood on the ground, frowning deeply with signs of worrying on her pretty face. It was obviously to the good fraction's disadvantage, and there were still two enigmatic Ghost King and Qing Long, who have not showed their might. Also the number of evil fraction disciple hiding were still unknown. The situation was worrying. Currently the situation is in a chaos. In the late night shadows, the evil fraction are everywhere, anytime and anywhere magical weapons are flying out to take lives. The good fraction fell into a bitter battle, muffled groans and miserable cries were heard. Zhang Xiaofan held on to the fire stick but did not attack. Because Bamboo Pika's Song Darren, Tian Linger etc. were worried about his injuries and form a circle around him, so he was not hurt in the moment. But due to the grave situation, he was as nervous too. As the flashes of light from the evil fraction became more aggressive, the good fraction were slowly being cut down. The main issue was that in the night darkness, it was impossible to see the evil fraction disciples who were hiding. They really suffered a major loss. Zhang Xiaofan was still at his original position and saw that his surrounding seniors and Ling Tian'er's stress were mounting. He felt anxious. He felt that even though his body was tired but still fine, he went up to join the battle. At this moment, suddenly a soft whistling sound was heard, like celestial wind chimes resounding through the 9 heavens, pleasing music to the ear. A splendid blue light suddenly rise up. Lu Shuiqi rise with the sword, but the Tianya divine sword shone resplendently and it actually lighted up the areas around it. Darkness appears not to be able to touch her. But she hurled towards the darkness. Whoo! A sharp whistling sound that shook the heaven. This beautiful girl, turned into a blue electric light, shot towards the darkness of the ancient forest. A few moments later, only blue light radiating was seen. Cries of alarm from the darkness were heard. The pressure from the crowd were lifted monetarily. Also at the same time, waves of Buddhism chants were heard. Fa Xiong placed his palms together and rose. Tips of his fingertips were shining with golden lights from the dignified and solemn reincarnation's pearls, and he was slowly turning. All of a sudden, he opened his eyes and the reincarnation pearls also flew to the other side of the darkness. A few moments later, a dazzling gold light raged in the darkness. Just like daylight, numerous evil fraction disciples cried and flew out. This immediately changed the situation. Like Qi Hao, Lin Jingyu, Li Xuan, Yan Hong and even Fashion, Shito etc., all of the outstanding younger generation of good fraction, they were only being caught unprepared beforehand and now started to attack one after another. And the evil fraction, who were slyly attacking from the surrounding, appeared not to have skilled masters, and not many could defend that well. The situation started to turn towards the good fraction. Standing far away, Ghost King and Qing Long, who were taking it in, frowned. Qing Long shaked his head slightly, sighed and said, "The good fraction young disciples, aptitude, everyone without exception, 1 in a million, compared to our juniors, they are much stronger." Ghost King nodded and looked somewhere far away. He suddenly said, "The girl that attacked first, her magical weapon, did you see it clearly?" Qing Long said indifferently, "Is Tianya right?" Ghost King turned his head and looked at him. Qing Long smiled, slowly and seemingly spoke in a soft and low voice, "Tianya divine sword, Tianya divine sword." Ghost King stood with his hands clasped behind, slowly said, "And that monk from Tianyin Temple, he had reincarnation pearls in his hands, the white-attired young guy from Qingyun sect, his dark green like water celestial sword, should be, Zan Long Dragon Slayer sword." The good fraction these few years really took pains to cultivate their young. Chapter 70 The Past. By this time, the late-night forest has been lightened up almost like daylight from the numerous magical Weepansa lights. From the deep of the forest until the most intensive battled open-air area, it seemed like piercingly cold sharp lights were flying everywhere. Under the colorful rays of lights, fresh red blood was unceasingly splattered onto slightly trembling trees. Coagulated into blood pearls, dripping silently. Lu Shuiqi landed with a clear whistling sound. In a moment, the night turned azure like the sky, a halo as clear as water appeared from her Tianya divine sword and shot out in all directions. Like a beautiful girl-esque glance brushing past this mundane world. Countless lush leaves turning outwards, making a rustling sound. The surrounding black-attired evil faction disciples were making odd cries incessantly. Although there were ones who tried their best to resist but eventually were knocked down too. Ever since making it alive from the Forsaken Abyss till now, her skills actually seemed to have progressed a lot. Zhang Xiaofan observed from afar and sucked in a breath of cold air, surprised and also respectful. Surrounding him, Song Darren, Dubishu etc. were gradually buckling under the strain. Although there were not many evil faction disciples who were attacking the Bamboo Valley disciples, but those were much skilled than the rest. Their clothes also carried a human skull symbol, but not known if that was Ghost King Klana's symbol. Tian Linger stood in front of Zhang Xiaofan. Her face was pale and little beads of perspiration also appeared on her forehead. Her actions of controlling the amber vermilion silk appeared slightly flustered. Although among the Bamboo Valley disciples, except for Zhang Xiaofan, Tian Linger was the youngest, but her aptitude far exceeded the few senior brothers. Comparing skills, except for Song Darren, she was next. Not sure was it that she was a girl or due to other reason, the evil faction disciples mainly kept attacking her. Now, even Zhang Xiaofan also felt that Tian Linger was feeling the strain. The night wind quietly blew past the forest that has become a battlefield. In the depth of the darkness, countless eyes seemed to be also spying on them. The shouts around them were getting urgent. Zhang Xiaofan frowned and looked outside. Only in a short period of time, the situation changed again. The evil faction disciples retaliated and Lu Shuiqi, Fa Shang, Qi Hao etc. who were previously fighting like splitting a bamboo, were now surrounded and battling with masters. Although not at a disadvantage now, but they were already unable to get away. However, for those somehow less skilled good faction disciples in the surroundings, more and more evil faction disciples were gathering around. Shrieks were heard and the situation has started to lean towards the evil faction again. Zhang Xiaofan gritted his teeth and took out his fire stick. He was unwilling to continue to rest and wanted to at least give a helping hand to his seniors and Tian Linger. However, he has just started to move when he heard Tian Linger cried out. He stifled, as if tripped by something. In a moment there were 3 or 4 strange magical weapons lights charging over. Song Darren and the rest were shocked but were unable to give aid in time. Zhang Xiaofan did not stop to think and rushed over, but it seemed that he was also a step too late. At that critical moment, Tian Linger's face was as white as paper. Both of her hands did not stop wielding. A shua shua shua, the amber vermilion silk danced in front of her to defend, but it was also too late. In an instant, there were 2 magical weapons, one black and one white, charging with the speed of light towards her. Zhang Xiaofan's heart almost jumped out. He opened his mouth but was unable to make any sound. At that moment, there was a flash of white, a figure blocked in front of Tian Linger, using both hands and immediately strike back at both weapons. In the far darkness, shouts of anger and cries of fear were heard right away. Everybody sighed in relief and looked at the figure. It was Mystera's wife, Suru. Suru quickly turned her head back and did a quick scan on Tian Linger and said, "A Linger, are you all right?" A. Tian Linger was still in shock, nodded and said, "Yes mother, I am alright." Suru frowned. At this time the evil faction disciples were closing in again. Suru quickly said, all of you quickly go, we cannot stay here. All of you leave this island once you all have escaped, we will rendezvous at East China Changhe City. Song Darren, Tian Linger and the rest were shocked, but they did not dare to speak upon looking at Suru's solemn face. Tian Linger muttered a reply and the Bamboo Valley disciples started to walk towards the back. At the moment, the situation was a mess and the battle was unusually intense. Suru dodged to the left and swayed to the right, and went up to help whenever she saw the good faction disciples were in danger, thus allowing them to withdraw from the battle. Her skills were considerably high and far exceeded the general evil faction disciples. Only her fluttering figure was seen in the dim light of the night, graceful and never revealed any traces of urgency. As long as there was a break, she raised her head and looked up. She could see only heavy dark clouds in the sky, but a disarray of brilliant flashes was also seen. Battling in the midair would be Taoist Kang Song and Tian Buyi fighting with evil faction by Duzi and Elder Duanmu. Her heart was rather worried, but looking at Tian Buyi, who just had a fight with blood-sucking demon, and currently still not at a disadvantage with Elder Duanmu, she was then relieved. Most of the good faction disciples had separately left after Suru did a few attacks to rescue them. Those left in the battlefield were mainly a few higher skilled disciples like Lu Shuiqi etc. But over at the evil faction side, it seemed like many had also left to pursue, so even though the good faction side was still at a disadvantage, there were no immediate danger at the moment. However, Suru felt more anxious. Because ahead of her, from the beginning till the end, Ghost King and Qing Long, the 2 most mysterious figures from the evil faction, had always been standing there, smiling and watching from the sidelines. Over at evil faction side, Ghost King and Qing Long were standing side by side and looking on while good faction disciples were unceasingly running away. Qing Long commented indifferently, "You are going to let these people go?" Ghost King smiled and said, "These juniors are not important. Beside, this time we come to Lubo Hill, is not really to fight till our deaths with the good faction people." Qing Long nodded, raised his head and looked at midair saying, "These 2 were among the 5-member team from Qingyun sect that brazenly encroached into our wildlands and savaged us badly." Ghost King said, "You are right. Taoist Kang Song, Tian Buyi and Shang Zhongliang, Seng Shu Chong, plus 1 more, Wan Jianyi, Ida those 5 people." Qing Long softly heaved a sigh and said, 100 years time passed by in a great haste. At that time, these people were only young ones resolute to kill and now unexpectedly are also leading and taking charge." Ghost King smiled lightly and said, "Long brother, you were not present at that time due to some affairs. If not, with the 4 of you holy envoys, during Qingyun Hill battle, Even though our holy sect may not be able to pull out a victory, but at least we would not be defeated that tragically. Qing Long shaked his head and said, impossible. The three main good faction sects were at their prime 100 years ago, and those old fools were coming out of their retirement one after another. Even if you included us, we would not be able to defend as well. But, it is laughable that at the Holy Hall in Wildlands, thousands of our holy sect members flee at the mere sight of Tama. Ghost King was silenced for a moment and slowly said, right. I was not at Holy Hall at that time because I had to take care of our predecessor Ghost King, but I also heard that it was very embarrassing. It was a pity that our highly skilled disciples were sent out to Qing Yun big battle and had countless casualties, if no to Qing Long suddenly interrupted, at that time I was at Holy Hall. Ghost King's body shook in surprise and said, what? Long brother, you were at the Holy Hall at that time? Qing Long, also can be translated as Green Dragon, laughed bitterly and said, that's right. Actually not only that, except for that big slacker Black Warrior, White Tiger and Scarlet Bird were also at Holy Hall. Ghost King's face expression changed. He forced a smile and said, then how is it that Long brother you were unable to recognize these two people just now? Qing Long laughed bitterly again and said, it could be said as an embarrassing matter. The attack by these five did not stop at Wildlands, they even invaded into our holy temple. The act shocked and terrified the whole Wildlands. Although both Wandu Thousand Poison Clan and Chongshen Longevity Hall were in charge of guarding the holy temple, and despite the fact we were never on good terms with these two factions, nevertheless the three of us, White Tiger, Scarlet Bird and myself, decided to lend a hand together with other branches, highly skilled fighters, in defending the holy Hall. Ghost King took a look towards midair and said, why? Their skills were already that powerful 100 years ago. Qing Long shaked his head and said, actually it was not so. After the crisis was over, I thought over it carefully. Actually it was because after our great loss at Qingyun Hill, many of our highly skilled fighters were either dead or injured and there was a widespread panic. When these five people barged in and attacked, we thought for a moment that the good faction forces had already arrived and we lost our will to fight. But we did not imagine that there were only 5 people. He paused a while and continued, among these 5 people, I had only met Wang Jianyi, which was why I did not recognize the other 4. When they attacked Holy Hall, 5 of them went separate ways instead and each came in from different direction. At that time, we were unprepared and in a state of agitated confusion. Once we heard cries of attack coming from all directions, we just lost our minds. If we were to receive the attacks calmly and waited until the situation settled down, we would have won without question. A pity, Too bad they had someone like Wang Jianyi. Ghost King frowned and said, what about this person? Qing Long briefly closed his eyes and was silent for a moment. He heaved a long sigh, shook his head and said, that person was a man of rare talent and outstanding ability. One that I rarely seen in my whole life. After the event, we discussed among ourselves and felt that even though the skills of the other 4 were good, but compared to Wang Jianyi, there was so much difference. It can be said that if they did not have him, these Qingyun sect guys absolutely would not be able to invade into our wildlands, not to say our holy Hall. Looking at Qing Long's expression, there was a look of wistfulness. It was as if he was reliving the memories. At that time, the 4 of them attacked from the sides, front and rear, but we only concentrated our forces at Holy Hall main door. While we were hesitating and panic-stricken, Wang Jianyi wielded his sword and carried on the attack alone. Ghost King frowned and said, only him? Qing Long sighed and said, yes, only him alone. I still remembered his clothes were as white as snow, his sword were jade green like water. That's right, it was that Dragon Slayer sword. I almost could not recognize it after not seeing it for 100 years. Ghost King was shocked. He looked at the direction of Qing Long's left finger, but it was pointing at the one who was still fighting in the battlefield, the jade green like autumn waters colored sword in Lin Jingyue's hand, the Dragon Slayer sword. So that Dragon Slayer sword was the one held by Wang Jianyi originally. Qing Long nodded and said, that's right, it was in his hand. At that time, I loudly questioned him, but he only laughed incessantly and charged into the crowd. He was attacking like an unhindered and irresistible force. Zeze. He was really a hero. Tongue-clicking sound. Ghost King looked on admiringly and nodded his head saying, that person was really unbelievable and extremely audacious. What happened next? Qing Long said. We were all taken aback and angry, but were worried that beside him, there might be other good faction skilled fighters attacking in any moment. We were even more alarmed when the battle roars behind the holy temple were getting nearer. In a state of panic, he managed to enter the main hall where we worshipped our Wisdom Queen and Wisdom King. Ghost King's usually expressionless face suddenly turned pale. He asked hoarsely, what? Qing Long laughed bitterly and said, even you have such a reaction. You could have imagined how infuriated we felt at that time. We did not care whether there were still any highly skilled fighters coming in, all of us were like madmen and rushed towards him. Whatever magical weapons we had, we used. In a short while, his white dress was stained with blood. However, he did not even turn back and continued to charge into the holy temple. He swiftly flew up onto the altar where we placed our offerings for our Wisdom King and Queen idols. In between the two idols, he physically engraved 3 big words into the white wall, Wanjianyi. Ghost King was speechless. Qing Long suddenly said, you know that Scarlet Bird had always veiled her face, right? Ghost King was surprised and said, yes, what happened? Qing Long said, among us, she was the only female but was also the most devoted one towards our 2 sacred idols. On that day, she was the first to attack without any hesitation. She sneaked an attack in the split seconds that Wan Jianyi took to crave the wordings and slashed her sword. And that slash actually chopped off Wan Jianyi's left arm. Ghost King was again shocked. Qing Long heaved a sigh and said, it gave you a shock too, right? We were stunned too. It was because when Wan Jianyi charged in, his mighty aura was overpowering. We never imagined that he would take on all of us alone, and even how mighty he would eventually be spent, like an arrow at the end of its flight. But his countenance did not change and only his face looked pale even though his left arm was chopped off and blood was spurting like a fountain. Instead, he turned and went to Scarlet Bird, stretched out his hand and lifted off her veil. He looked at her, laughed and said, stunning beauty as expected. Saying which, he rode and steered his Dragon Slayer sword and fought his way out again. Ghost King shaked his head and said, he was still able to fight his way out even like that. Qing Long sighed and said, firstly, he was much too dauntless. His blood was all over the holy temple, and despite losing his arm, his sword aura force seemed to surpass what we felt previously. Secondly, his other 4 Qing Yun sect teammates started a fire in the holy temple. Thick black smoke billowed everywhere. We were worried that there might be more good faction enemies, and we were also anxious to put out the fire. Unexpectedly, in that panic state of mind, we let him escapade. Ghost King heaved a long sigh and said, cold nati imagine that within the good faction, there was still such a hero. Qing Long coolly said, it was a pity even though he was a hero without a doubt, unparalleled in this world, but he did not have a good ending. After we confirmed that there were actually only 5-member team from Qing Yun sect that attacked us on that day, we were really incensed. But I could also see that despite the fact that those guys from Thousand Poison Clan and Longevity Hall were cursing fiercely, but in their heart, all were in awe of Wan Jianyi. Especially that junior sister of mine, Scarlet Bird. He seemed to have thought of something and did not continue his statement. Instead, he changed the topic and said, at that time, we all felt that among the Qing Yun sect, he would definitely be the one to take over as the chief head of the sect. However, not long after the incident, we heard that it was his senior brother, Dao Zan, who took over. And from that time onwards, we never heard anything more about this man with astonishing talents. It was only today then I know that he had actually passed away. He heaved a sigh after he finished, showing great regret over the matter. Ghost King gave a smile and said, that's right. It was a pity that I could not have a showdown with this hero, it was really a regret of a lifetime. Qing Long looked up, glanced at midair and suddenly gave a sarcastic laugh and said, Elder Duanmu and Bai Duzi, these fellows escaped into wildlands after losing at Qing Yin Hill. Eventually, they met Wan Jianyi 5-member team before reaching Holy Temple and fled after getting a beating. They did not even dare to return to Holy Temple. Now they dared to boldly ask for Wan Jianyi. They were really shameless. Ghost King smiled lightly and said, they were only Thousand Poison Clan, that old freak's lackeys. Long brother, why do you bother to get angry over them? Qing Long stretched his hand, lightly flicked his white dress and lightly said, it was an unimaginable big insult when Wan Jianyi encroached our holy temple. I painstakingly practiced for 100 years and also took great risk to find the universe pure light ring, only to prepare for that very one day where I could fight with him again. When I heard that he had passed away today, I only felt disappointment and regret. But I never expected these people to say shameless words like digging out his body from his grave. I felt ashamed to be associated with them. Ghost King shook his head and smiled gently. He looked up to watch the battles but could only see that the flashes of lights in the mid-air were getting intense and he almost could not make out those four people's silhouette. And the dark clouds in the sky were as if being lighted up even more from the magical weapons lights. Silence across the firmament, only in the distance vast sea, that series of long whistling sounds, gradually becoming mournful. Ghost King suddenly frowned, turned and said to Qing Long, did you feel that something strange was going on tonight? Qing Long looked up, remained silent for a moment, his countenance suddenly changed and said, you mean Ghost King nodded, said, the legend stated that every time the strange beast was born, heaven and earth would surely change, accompanied with big storms. Therefore, in the ancient scroll, Divine and Evil the Strange, it was recorded that Thunder God mounted that beast. Qing Long's expression gradually turned solemn. He frowned and said, why was it such an untimely coincidence, tonight would be the night. Ghost King pondered for a while and said, it had been a few days since I arrived at this Lubo Hill, but during the past few days at dusk, there had not been any such strange whistling sounds like tonight. I was only afraid if the Kui Niu was really coming out tonight, it seemed like we would have to do some early preparation. Qing Long slowly nodded his head, said, that's right. After all, Kui Niu matter would be more important, let us leave this place to Thousand Poison Clan people. Hey, once we subdued Kui Niu, with another 3 supernatural beasts, or Ghost King suddenly gave a cough. Qing Long was startled and immediately laughed in spite of himself while shaking his head and said, the 100 years of bitter training, turned one into an idiot, Kiki, Zongzhu please don't mind. Ghost King faintly smiled, turned and left, without another glance at the people fighting intensely in the battlefield. Qing Long glanced at a distance, but from afar, he saw that the good faction disciples were leaving one after another, gradually fading into the forest, figures disappearing. Involuntarily his thoughts were again vaguely stirred up, he heaved a sigh, and turned to follow Ghost King. Silent darkness, but countless ferocious eyes seemed to be watching menacingly, like a tiger eyeing its prey. When the crowd ran, a wail of misery was heard from somewhere, from far it drifted out, reverberated in the depths of the forest and accompanied the mysteriously long whistling sound in the distant vast sea. That night seemed especially forlorn. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Tian'er, Song Darren, Hidaji and Du Bishu, a total of 5 people, drove their magical weapons and hastily flew forward into the forest. Actually, with their current skill levels, directing their weapons to drive up in the sky would naturally be much faster, but just as they broke through the evil faction Disciplessa encirclement and were about to take off, they noticed some distance away, a few juniors followed suit and flew up. Suddenly a few ominous lights shined through the dense forest below their feet, and literally beat them down. Those wails of misery, it seemed they would not be able to make it alive. Everyone's countenance changed. The lush foliage forest before them, in addition the late night, and the numerous evil faction disciples surrounding them, if they were to be discovered while flying out, they would practically become live targets. Song Darren as the eldest disciple, had seen more compared to the rest of his junior sister and brothers, made the decision on the spot and decided to fly rapidly in between the forest. Although the forest was dark and hard to spot the evil faction disciples, but the other party would not be able to take a good look at oneself too. As long as they kept going east, once out of the forest, they would leave the evil faction encirclement and be much safer. Once the decision was made, the 5 of them flew off with all of their might towards east. Song Darren took the lead, Zhang Xiaofan was the last. Everyone had their concentration on driving their weapons, flying back and forth in the middle of the forest. At that moment, although Zhang Xiaofan's chest was still throbbing with pain, but the wound sustained from the fight with blood-sucking demon was not as serious as he had thought. And from the fire stick that was tied to his right arm, it radiated warm yang energy to him from time to time, circulating slowly in his body, and seemed to have special control over blood-sucking demonia's strange blood-sucking art skill. But although that fire stick stealthily controlled the evil power from the blood-sucking art skill, but at that moment when Zhang Xiaofan was using his fire stick to fly forward, a strange cold feeling passed on from the fire stick and yet had some conflict with the inferno mirror. In his body, the 2 strange energy currents repelled once they encountered each other. However, since the Inferno Mirror was not energized by Zhang Xiaofana's spiritual energy, very soon it was oppressed by the cold energy from the fire stick. Zhang Xiaofan was concentrating all his energy on following his senior's brother's and sister's flight paths, and naturally would not notice these minor changes in his body. He only kept looking up while he was flying, but saw that dark clouds beyond the horizon, churning like boiling water, waves of light rays, lighting up the 9 heavens directly, turned half of the horizon red. Over there, obviously would be the battleground between his teacher, Tian Buyi, and Shibo, Taoist Kang Song. With the evil faction demons, he wondered if the elders would be alright. Thinking about that, Zhang Xiaofan immediately shaked his head, musing that since his teacher's skills were that powerful, naturally he would not have any mishap and he was probably worrying too much. After laughing at himself for having too much concerns, he bestirred himself, increased his speed so that he could follow well behind his senior brothers and sister. The darkness in front of them was like a boundless net, with long and unseen boundaries. The 5 of them gradually became far from the noisy fights, immersing into the darkness. Even the surroundings were also gradually quieting down. In the night, there seemed to be only darkness in front of them. The approaching sea surface, that mysterious mournful long whistling sound, distinctly became clearer, distinctly became nearer. A unknown currency sea, Kui Niu, an old name for a wild ox or yak. It was also described in Baik as an legendary animal that sounded like thunder. One-legged and Ida's image was seen on bronze during Shang and Western Zhou Dynasty. It appears that Kui Niu and most of the other divine animals or demonic beasts that follows in later chapters are drawn mainly from the A+or minus a micro C Shanhai Jing classics of mountains and seas. Kui Niu and most of the other divine animals or demonic beasts that follows in later chapters are drawn mainly from the A+or minus a micro C Shanhai Jing classics of mountains and seas.